I'm so excited to have you on because I've known you for
probably going back to
5 years, probably.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Pre-COVID.
Dude, yeah. How crazy is it? Time goes by so fast. It's been fast. 5 years.
Since COVID.
Yeah, right. Since pre-COVID. But real quick, do you remember what number we normally have the mics on?
I think usually like 6.5, 7. Mine a little low.
I think we're all a little low.
Test. This is what the people want to hear.
Yeah, that sounds way better. If they have listened to the podcast at all, this is very much things they're used to.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But we've known each other for 5 years now, which is crazy. That just always blows my mind when I just think about how fast time goes by.
Absolutely.
But we met doing Jiu Jitsu. You are now also my chiropractor.
Yeah.
And I've seen you on and off, for forever, it seems like. But Jeff Hijazi in the house, owner of Back to Wellness Chiropractic, Jiu Jitsu purple belt badass. And honestly, I have probably said this to other people on the podcast, but I don't know if I know a nicer person than you. And I genuinely mean that. You are one of my favorite people to be around. You are always a very positive influence in my life. Anytime I see you, you're always just happy and giddy and wanting to give me a hug and talk about Thunder basketball or talk about sports or talk about chiropractic or whatever. And I always look forward to that. I tell people a lot that my one day that I kind of have to myself, quote unquote, is Tuesdays, right? That is my day off every week, kind of guaranteed. And it is by far my busiest day, because I fill it full of things that not only I need to get done or that I want to do, but I also fill it with people that I feel like help recharge my batteries. And so while I'm doing that, I have kind of the double aspect of, like I go get my hair cut by Max at the Annex. You go to the Annex as well. That's
right.
Annex guys, all three of us here.
Nice.
Naturally.
But
I
it's
recognize that haircut.
Yeah, we could see it when you walked in.
That guy's got some good hair.
But, going to see Max is I get a haircut, which is great because it's good service. I get a good haircut, but I also get to talk to Max. And that's always a recharging thing for me. I love talking to Max. And you are absolutely a huge part of my Tuesday routine. I see you every other Tuesday. And those are my favorite Tuesdays to go in and see you, because not only do I get awesome chiropractic and healing, and you're always helping me with all my little jiu-jitsu bumps and bruises, but I also just get to see and hang out with you. And I love that.
Nice. That makes sense. You come in on Tuesdays now.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. I didn't realize. I am so honored to be part of like your recovery recharge day.
You are absolutely a huge part of it, and one that I look forward to every single time I see it come up on the calendar.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So to kind of get started, because these are some questions that I don't even know the answer to. How long have you been practicing chiropractic?
Yep. I started practicing in the summer of 2009, right in Edmond, right out of school. So this July will be 15 years in practice.
Dang. I guessed that actually the other day, earlier today, when I was talking to the Resilient chiropractor, I think it's Resilience. They're moving in next door to our Yukon store.
Yeah, we saw them pulling in.
I was talking about you to them when they came in the store today, and my guess, I was like, I think Jeff's probably been doing this for like 15 years now.
Yeah,
I was right on the money.
Nice.
Look at that.
Nice.
Look at that.
Yeah, man, I've been doing this 15 years. I went to Logan College of Chiropractic, which is in the St. Louis area, which I think you're from Missouri, right?
Yep. Yeah, Kevin's actually from.
I grew up in St. Charles, or Florissant, and then St. Charles as a kid.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yep.
So one of my best friends that I went to chiropractic school grew up in Florissant, and he still practices there.
Does he really?
They live outside of Florissant, and he commutes there. I don't know if it's like an old family name. They've been in that Florissant. What's the other town that's close? Ferguson, all that right there in that area. Sortino Chiropractic. I don't know if that's kind of a long shot.
I moved out when I was 13, or moved out of Florissant, and I was in St. Charles until I was 18. So people ask me for like good bar recommendations like in St. Louis, and I'm like, I wasn't able to drink when I was there. So.
That's funny to think about.
It's been a long time since I've been there, though. So
So Logan's in Chesterfield, which is West St. Louis. So that's where we pretty much stayed. And but graduated 2009. originally from Oklahoma. The wife and I are originally from Northeast Oklahoma. So we knew we wanted to come back to Oklahoma to set some roots. I actually looked at Northwest Arkansas. I ended up working for a guy as an associate in Edmond for about 3 years and then bought the practice.
That's amazing, man. I didn't know that. I didn't know what part of, so Northeast Oklahoma, you said. What part, where were you from?
Tahlequah, Oklahoma.
Tahlequah, Oklahoma. I've heard of that.
We've listen, I've done some floating there.
I was going to say, most people either know Tahlequah by the Illinois River, coming up and floating the Illinois River, or Lake Tenkiller. It's a nice lake to go to.
Yeah,
it's about 20 miles outside of town.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's funny. That because, growing up, I grew up in like Southwest Missouri, so we weren't far at all. Because I grew up in Springfield, so it's like we weren't far at all from each other then.
Yep.
Dang, that's cool.
How was driven through Springfield many times.
Oh, I'm sure.
How was your time in St. Louis? Did you enjoy your time there?
Actually, we really did. At first, it was definitely an adjustment. I remember it was literally the first weekend, being small town kids from Tahlequah. My wife and I met in high school, went through college together. We were first time like leaving the house, leaving, the nest and in this big city. And our family had helped us move up that kind of first weekend. It was like the first weekend we were actually by ourselves. We had just left the grocery store. We were stopping at a convenience store to get some gas and go inside to get a couple things. as we're approaching the door, there's a guy coming up and I try to go do the courteous Oklahoma thing, grab the door, give him a smile. And he just doesn't even make eye contact, just walks straight in. I'm like, I just looked to my wife. I'm like, well, we're not in Tahlequah anymore.
Yeah. That was really funny because that was almost the inverse reaction when my wife and I moved to Oklahoma City in 2015. The first thing we noticed within the first few days was like, everybody holds the door for us. This is awesome.
This is so nice.
That's awesome.
That's crazy.
But we love St. Louis. We met some of our lifelong friends there. It is really a good place. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And obviously a lot of my family's still there, and that's where my parents are. And so we make trips back there, and Alyssa's family is still there as well. So we make frequent trips, especially, with the baby now, they make more trips here. But yeah.
That's the secret. You have the baby. Then they got to come here.
Exactly.
What do you guys know about Troy, Missouri?
Troy, Missouri.
Heard of it.
It's northwest of the city, and I know that's just one of my clinical mentors' practices. There's just a top-notch clinic there.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know.
Heard of Troy.
I think I passed through Troy. My grandpa's bought some property when my dad was a kid. So my family owns a little bit of property north of St. Louis. And I think we have to pass through Troy. So I know some good fast food spots off the highway.
Yeah, it's a small town.
And I don't know that I've spent much other time in Troy other than that, though, to be honest with you. I've passed through it probably 100 times. So
it's so funny and weird to me. Literally there is this world-class clinic there that does functional medicine, PRP injections. They're integrating all this, if you guys have heard the QC Kinetic stuff, they're doing all that kind of stuff with chiropractic. They have a gym. It is amazing. And they're in this tiny little small town.
It's so funny.
It's so
just
funny.
Random little hey,
it took me a second to even think, and I'm even second guessing. I'm like, is it Troy, Missouri? That was that small little town that we used to pass through.
Yeah.
It's crazy how some of those world-class things just end up in these totally random places.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it was, of course, his wife. I think his wife was from there.
Yeah.
And he was from I don't know. I think he's from somewhere in Missouri, but then he's very much tied into Major League Baseball. And so he's going down to the Cardinals facility a lot.
Yeah. Troy's not too far from St. Louis either. You can make a day trip there pretty easily. So
nice.
Well, one of the things that, I think is a definitely unique thing for you. And I think, at least in my perspective, less in the chiropractic realm and more of in the Jiu Jitsu realm, as I watch you beat up on people and myself on a regular basis.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Okay. We'll pull footage.
I see Thomas has got a little bit of a black eye. I can only assume that's from you, right?
I don't know if that's from me.
Yeah, probably is. But Jeff is also legally blind. So I'm sure I've probably heard, but has this something that you've always dealt with? Is this something that kind of came on with age?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is a genetic retinal eye disease that I have. So of course I was born with it, but I wasn't diagnosed until about 10, 11. I was in 4th grade. As school was starting to become more on the board, print was getting smaller in the books and stuff like that, I was starting to really struggle and fall behind. And then in the small town of Tahlequah, the eye doctors there really didn't know what was going on. There's actually an optometry school at Northeastern State, which is in Tahlequah, and they sent me to the optometry school there. They didn't quite have all the testing, so they sent me to Dean McGee. So I was like at 10, 11 years old, diagnosed with a condition called Stargardt's. And so it's a retinal disease that affects the central vision. So like I have full peripheral vision and I still have central vision, but it's just blurry as hell.
Yeah, right.
Like I can't drive. You do not want me on the road driving. But like, for instance, growing up, like I played a lot of competitive basketball. Got all the way up to junior high and then high school. It was way too competitive, and my vision was starting to decline a little bit.
Sure.
Because it is a form of juvenile, or they consider it a juvenile macular degeneration. So the macula degenerates through the juvenile phase. So from like 10 to my early 20s, I went from, and I know probably a lot of people don't necessarily realize these numbers, like what it really means. But everyone knows 20/20 vision is like ideal, perfect vision, or not perfect, we're the best, or whatever. I know there's like a little bit better than that, but 2200 is legally blind. I went from about, when I was initially diagnosed with correction, because you guys can see I've got some glasses for nearsightedness and stigmatism. I was about 2100 then, and then by my early 20s, I was about 2250, 2300, somewhere in there.
Wow.
Yeah. So on the other side of being legally blind.
So is that something, has it continued to change, or is that kind of halted?
Thank God. That's a great question. I have one of because there's like several different inherited retinal eye diseases that are kind of in this kind of umbrella of inherited retinal eye diseases. And mine is the one that will stop progressing in the early 20s.
Oh, that's
like
good.
There's for instance, there's one called retinitis pigmentosa, and people will literally, could you imagine having normal vision and then by your late teens, early 20s being completely blind?
Oh gosh,
devastating.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Thank God I did not have, like, it's plateaued. I'm about 2400. Maybe in some good lighting I might be closer to 2200. But that's
well, and it's funny because for as long as I've known you, it's always been something that I felt like you and peers and friends around you have always kind of talked about lightly. And I think the reason for that is because you have absolutely in no way ever let it, I feel like, slow you down at all. And that is something that I've always found very cool about you. Like, you are regularly doing jiu-jitsu. You're on the mats. You're kicking people's butts left and right. I know you still play basketball with your kids. Like, it didn't let you slow you down in your career. And so that is kind of how I think we've all gotten to this idea that you're faking it. So that's actually why we're on the podcast.
Intervention.
Yeah, like you hit me with a triangle the other day, and I'm like, blind my ass. All right, like, okay, he can see the peripherals. Yeah, I'm not buying it.
Enough of this bit. We're an intervention today.
Yeah, right. I know your wife likes to tell you that you have selective vision, and it's just when you don't want to drive. So we get it. We know where you're at.
Hey, I've never had to be the DD.
That's right.
Hey.
That's right.
It's been a whole bit just to get out of being DD my whole life.
That was it. Like, you knew at 10. You're like, I don't want to have to be the DD later in life.
What foresight I had at 10.
Yeah, I tell you what. But again, I think the joke is that, oh, I did that. I did the turn up on you again.
Oh,
you got me again.
I've done this to Kevin twice now, where I accidentally turn his headphones like all the way up, where it's just like screaming at him.
So if you rewind just like 30 seconds, you'll see me like this, and both of them just normal.
What's wrong with you, Kevin?
I'm like looking at you guys like, you guys hear this?
But again, I think, like, as funny as it is, and I know we're poking fun, but I think it has kind of been something that I don't know, because you haven't ever let you slow you down. Like, it's become one of those things that because I think you're so lighthearted about it as well. And I think that's super cool, because obviously it's not the most ideal situation. It's not, you wouldn't have chose it. But I think it is, for lack of a better way of putting it, I think it has obviously been a part of who you are and shaping you into like the man and the person you are today and the way that you carry yourself. So it's, it's one of those things where, as tough as it is, I know from my perspective, I always try to think of my life of like, even the things that aren't great have shaped me to who I am today. And if I like who I am today, I have to ride with those. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're part of it.
Yes.
And so, you know, and I guess I'm just more kind of curious too, but, you know, explain, I guess, if you feel comfortable to or whatever, but maybe some of the challenges that's kind of come along the way for you, whether career or jiu-jitsu or kind of whatever you've been into.
Boy, that's, man, good questions. And I'll touch on a couple different aspects, you know, early on. So, cause I was kind of in that mindset of going back to like the beginning, I had a very tough time with confidence. One of my biggest issues was being able to walk into a room and just see faces. So imagine walking through high school and like seeing bodies and people, but not really being able to see faces.
Right.
You know, and that was always tough for me because by nature, I am just a people person. I like to say hi and just all that kind of stuff. And so it really affected me. But it was kind of necessary for the time because I was also kind of a sensitive guy. And so it just toughened me up more emotionally. Like it just made me become more tough about it. And then I started developing a sense of humor where it was always more comfortable when I could realize that people knew about it. I didn't want to be treated differently.
Yeah, right.
So, but I just wanted people to understand that I did have an issue just so they kind of knew.
Right.
But then I would do things to lighten the mood, make jokes about it, and just, you know, and that's how I would cope with it and deal with it. And I think a lot of people with disabilities do that.
Right.
It's definitely a coping mechanism. So from like the early years, that definitely affected me. I had some, you know, some good family members that, you know, were always in my ear and saw me when I would get down as a kid and just be like, hey, you could be completely blind. You know, you could be in a wheelchair, you know, it could be worse. And then I just came to this conclusion, like, after a certain point, I didn't say like it took a long time as I grew, but I mean, everybody has hurdles, man. Like, you know, even super stud Thomas over here has got flaws. You know, Kevin is a stud over here.
I got a list.
This is news to me.
You know, it's like everybody has hurdles. You know, this was one of my hurdles.
Yeah.
This is going to help define me. Like you said earlier, like this is just my, I don't know. I don't want to say go like destiny or go like all that kind of stuff, but it's just like, this was in my cards. This is what I had to deal with. It could be worse.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to try to make the best of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I think the biggest thing is, you know, one of the coolest things, what's the right way to put this? You know, and even to kind of get Kevin into this, if you're like, oh, my buddy is legally blind, would you be like, he should do jiu-jitsu? You know, like that's definitely a bit of a,
wouldn't be my first thought.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I guess that's a good segue too of like, you know, what got you into jiu-jitsu? How did that all start? And I know the story, but I'd like to hear it again.
Yes.
I don't.
So, so it's actually funny because you guys are like really building me up here, but it definitely took a lot of talking me into doing jiu-jitsu before I ever considered it.
Right.
So this is the story. So at my practice at the time in Edmond, we had a vacancy next to our practice for quite a while before it had been a liquor store. And so not there's anything wrong with it, but for instance, one of our assistants had her car like completely creamed and totaled. Thank God she wasn't like in it, but there was a guy like coming midday to go get some booze and just like hit the gas instead of the brake. And just like, so like, it was, anyways. Yeah. So like we were kind of happy when the liquor store like moved, and then it was vacant for a while, and then a jiu-jitsu or an MMA gym moved in, and Oklahoma Martial Arts. And we were like, I had just bought the practice. I'd mentioned earlier that I worked as an associate for 3 years, and I had bought the practice. Well, I had like literally, it was September 1st of 2012. That day moving forward was when it was my practice. And it was right around in that time. We were up on the weekend. We were painting some walls and doing some new things since it was ours, you know, and OMA's moving in, and we're like, I'm like telling, oh my gosh, Cassie, this is so amazing. You know, like, look, there's a gym next door. This is going to be great. This is going to be perfect. And I come out and introduce myself, and I'll go ahead and say that. I'll go ahead and finish the story because it's a little incriminating to another chiropractor. But Seth, the owner of the gym, his wife, well, they're both owners. I had started talking with the wife, and then she was super friendly and nice. And obviously she realized I was a chiropractor, and she was kind of being nice about it. She's like, yeah, I worked for somebody before. And so Seth had came up to me and said, hey, you the chiropractor next door? And I was like, yep. And he's like, are you involved in this group? And I was like, kind of, because we can go there in a little bit.
Sure.
But I was kind of involved with them at the time. And he was like, well, I will never come see you. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then, so that's how things started with the gym next. And I was like, there is no way in hell I am ever going over there.
Right.
But over the next like couple of months, I started to become friends with the owners, and I'd kind of be, friendly. And then they might've came in for some, visits and stuff like that. And we got to know them. And then once Seth realized that basically I was worried about basically going over there and getting hurt, because for me being a chiropractor, I got to work tomorrow. Like I don't want some guy hurting my shoulder or my neck where I can't work or practice. And anyways, he's like, that's the problem. I got you. So I finally talked me into it, started coming over to class, got the bug, got addicted. I will say a funny little story for the first several months. He would tell everybody that I would start to roll with, hey, this is Dr. Hijazi next door. He's the chiropractor. He knows how to make you piss and shit yourself. So don't hurt him. And
That sounds like Seth.
Yes. And I would just stand behind them, shaking my head, trying to be serious.
I know, there's pressure points. Yes. There's things I can do.
Like, don't hurt me, man.
Yeah.
that extra little sprinkle into the jiu-jitsu.
That's so
chiropractor
funny.
experience.
That's so funny.
So that's how I got into jiu-jitsu. But I fell in love.
Oh, so much fun. So how long you been training now then?
So a little over 10 years.
10 years.
So 11. And really like not super hardcore,
Sure.
At the gym we go to, I mean, there's some hardcore people that, I mean, are training 6-7 days a week, I'm training 2 days a week. I've probably been averaging 2 to 3 days a week, depending on, how much I'm into or what's going on in my life at the time. So it sounds like a long time, but I've averaging at least two to 3 days a week.
Well, and it's funny because, 10 years ago you were worried about getting hurt, and now every time I see you, I try to hurt you. I'm literally, I am trying to hurt you. I'm like, I'm going to get Jeff today. I'm going to make it so he can't walk.
Oh God. The fact that I walk out of class, it just totally made my day now.
I don't really think about it too, how physical a job a chiropractor has if you do get hurt, there's legitimately like, it would be difficult or even impossible to carry out my job the next day. So have you found yourself ever hurt, or even just like aches and pains that have hindered your job at all? Or
yes and no. I'm really picky about making sure who I'm rolling with, and just those kind of things, and trying to limit my mat time just so I'm not getting a ton of just wear and tear. But I've definitely had some little nicks and bumps and bruises and stuff like that. Just I had like a broken toe once I had to fight through. I've had kind of like a shoulder, kind of a rotator cuff type thing I had to fight through once, some tendonitis in my wrist. I mean, yes and no. I mean, it's definitely, it hasn't stopped me where I've not been able to practice. I've just had to grit and bear and push through it.
Yeah. And everybody, even people that don't do jiu-jitsu, chiropractors that don't do jiu-jitsu are going to have aches and pains. They're
very much
pick up a box wrong, and they're, and something gets kind of pulled in their back or something like that. Obviously they're chiropractors, so hopefully they should know how to get better a little quicker.
Yes. And I tell people all the time, I'm pushing and pulling on humans all day long. Like I lift like 2 days a week, and I just do like more like full body movements. I don't try to do a bunch of like crazy hardcore resistance training. And it's because I'm like literally pushing and pulling on people all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so my question with jiu-jitsu and being legally blind, do you find that it being a closer combat sport, it being do you find yourself a little less, for lack of better terms, handicapped because of that, because there's a little closer quarters?
So great question. And I'm glad that you brought this up, because Thomas mentioned that I played basketball, with my kids. Mm-hmm. My son likes to play a lot of basketball. I grew up playing a lot of basketball as well. I loved one things I loved about basketball is that you're exerting yourself almost 100%, you're going hardcore and you're doing this game that you love. It's like you don't even realize you're even doing it. It's a game. You're at the end of it, you're drenched in sweat, you had fun, you're exhausted, and you're not like thinking this sucks the whole time through it, right?
Right.
So as I was getting older and my vision was deteriorating, I couldn't go and play pickup basketball at the YMCA or the local rec center. Something, without getting into too much detail, lighting is a big thing. Going inside gyms, I have a harder time with depth perception. I can play some decent pickup basketball like outside. But anyways, I just couldn't go play pickup basketball anymore like I used to. Jiu Jitsu filled that. It was huge. I mean, you don't have to have any vision doing I shouldn't say any. You don't have to have much vision doing Jiu Jitsu.
Right. Yeah.
Like
there's lots of situations that you just can't see anything anyway.
Yeah,
like you can't really see what's going on.
Right.
Sometimes my face is buried
in someone's chest.
Right.
So man, once you grab a hold of someone, you can close your eyes and go.
Yeah.
So that's honestly one big, and it filled in that gap of what basketball was doing, where it was this game, there was strategy, there's all this stuff that goes into it. And at the end of it, you're spent, you're exhausted, you're drenched in sweat, and you had fun. And you've learned this cool skill.
Yeah. I know Thomas has talked about that. And I know like personally, this is when I was in high school. I think me and a buddy, we used to, we would go lift, and then for our cardio, we would just go like wrestle somewhere. Neither of us knew what we were doing at all, but like we do that for 5 minutes and just both be gassed. Yeah. And it was like, man, I didn't even realize like how much effort I was putting in that. Like that was a whole lot better than running on a treadmill or doing some interval training or this or that. I was very much distracted from how much effort I was putting in. And I know Thomas has brought that up before of like when someone is trying to choke you unconscious, it distracts from just the fact that you're doing cardio, but every other stressor in life as well.
You can't really be thinking about anything else when somebody is literally trying to choke you unconscious or like break your limbs. You're like, I'm kind of focused on this right now. Yes. I don't think I'm going to be able to think priority outside of this.
You're not worrying about the bills. You're not worrying about the mortgage.
I don't think you can.
No.
One of the things that I do think is really cool, and one of the things I've appreciated a lot is also from, not just you being a great training partner and you being, a super cool guy, but it is always really cool to kind of, when we are at jiu-jitsu, you having the aspect of being a doctor, and not just being a doctor, but somebody who is also like very involved with anatomy and the human body and kind of how it works and operates. And so it's always really cool when we're kind of learning something, or I know you and I have talked a billion times about how like different moves work and how different things work. And it's always really cool to kind of be able to pick your brain a little bit. And I know our coaches do as well. Like Coach Bill, just yesterday morning, just asking, like, hey, why does this work this morning? Why does this work this way? And you're able to kind of extend the joint at this point. And so it's a really cool thing also to kind of have that insight from somebody who understands anatomy more than all of us combined. To kind of be able to say, well, hey, this is kind of how this is why this works, and this is why doing it this way works better than this way.
Yeah, I've just always been a why person. And so going through chiropractic school, there was just a lot of no really great explanations on why for a lot of things. And I've just had to work through finding out a lot of my whys, on, some of that kind of like some of that stuff is just, pretty straightforward, self-explanatory with some anatomy and physiology and some of those things. But yeah, man, I just can chalk that up to, I just try to be curious and just try to search the whys for things. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it definitely does.
I know you brought up earlier the joke that Seth was telling everybody you know how to make them piss and shit themselves. But legitimately, do you feel like it's given you somewhat of an edge or like an unfair advantage as far as understanding anatomy more than the average person in the gym?
Yes.
Much more than the average.
That's a good question. So when it comes to just trying to get somebody like to move their body, where I'm like, I want them to roll this way or that way, like, yes. Yeah. But in some ways, I've had to fight through jiu-jitsu, and I've heard somebody say this, and so I'm just going to like kind of piggyback this term, like, since I'm a healer, I'm putting air quotes up, but just doing what I do and kind of knowing the spine, I feel like I will err on the side of caution sometimes, where I'm not wanting to hurt somebody, just because I'm like, dude, I don't want to wrench your neck, or whatever.
And it's funny, you spend all day realigning spines, and then you go to Jiu Jitsu and you unalign them. So
this is like our joke where we said we were going to open a fast food restaurant. This is his gimmick.
This is how you create patience. That's right. We're on to you.
We're figuring this all out.
Yes. This is my whole business model.
The scheme's coming together.
This is the portion we're going to have to cut.
It's great.
Podcast over.
Yeah, I'd be like, Jeff, you kind of, I tweaked my neck. He goes, oh, I have availability, tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow at 11?
Yeah, you want to come by? We'll get you, Cass will get y'all set up. It'll be great. It's so funny.
We're on to you.
Yeah, we're figuring it out. What, I guess I'm curious, like coming from, Tahlequah, was there somebody there that influenced you, or something just along the lines of like being around? Was there a chiropractor in your life that kind of influenced you, or did you just have like a general? I know you talked about being curious and having a why. Was there something about chiropractic specifically that kind of drew you to it?
My vision.
Yeah.
So I had this just. I don't know what it was. Like a lot of people, a lot of millennials coming right out of high school, like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I just feel like I need to go to college.
Yeah.
Like I was in that group and started going to my local university there in Tahlequah. Started taking basics and then was gravitating towards math and sciences. There was like a career day thing, and there was one of the recruiters from Logan actually was there with a booth, and I started kind of talking with her and started just looking into it. Basically, my vision. There was another little kind of small story back when I was in 9th grade in high school. We had to write a paper on like what you want to be when you grow up or whatever, and it was one of those things like I had no idea. I was like, what am I? I didn't even have any clue. And the teacher, because she knew my vision, she was like, well, what about a chiropractor? Like that's something that, people have to use their hands. And I was like, I didn't even know what a chiropractor was. And so I started researching it a little bit then and kind of wrote this paper on why maybe, chiropractic career would maybe be something I would pursue because of my vision. And then it was like, I was in college, and then it kind of like came back to me like, that's a chiropractic school booth and, professional school. And I was kind of like, I came from, on my mom's side of the family, especially came from like very much kind of service oriented restaurant owners, business owners, and just worked with people. And I wanted to do some kind of healthcare. I was kind of honestly looking into like nursing or PA or just something like that. Yeah. And then the lady at the booth kind of just sparked my interest again. And then I started really just looking into it. And I just thought the more and more I thought about it, I went up and toured the school, and it just made sense. Being visually impaired, I can work with people, help people, use my hands.
Right.
Growing up and being somewhat athletic and playing sports and stuff like that, I can physically kind of use my body to, hands. This is kind of a way to get around my vision. That was kind of what got me into
That's
chiropractic.
Cool though. Like, I mean, that's a perspective that, I hadn't, I guess, ever like thought of, but a big part of being a chiropractor is much more hands-on than a lot of other, healthcare professions, and your ability, because like most of chiropractic, I feel like, I'm obviously not a chiropractor, but I feel like a lot of it is feel, a lot of like feeling, understanding, I know when you're even treating me, I can feel, like working your way down my spine or whatever it is, you're feeling and kind of getting an idea, of what needs to be adjusted and what doesn't, or whatever, mostly based off of feel. So, I mean, that makes sense. And that's a cool perspective. I had never really put two and two together on that.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't going to say anything.
So, question: I'm curious if this is a myth or real. I hope this is an okay question.
Any questions open?
Okay. What?
At this point, I say that.
Is it a myth when people say when they lose one sense that their other senses start to heighten?
Good question. In my personal experience, I don't think that I have this amazing daredevil ability to like feel things. You know what I mean? I think that what happens is that you just are forced to use your other senses.
Yeah. You know,
that's just my opinion on it. Cause I've known this, this is the only thing I know. So it's like, it's hard to compare.
Yeah.
I guess my vision did kind of start at this kind of like a not so bad and then progressed. So I don't know. Like I would say no. I think it's more of a myth.
Okay.
That's my opinion. I don't know where the science might lie on that, but I think it's more of a myth. I think that you're just forced to use more of your other senses.
Maybe develop better skills with those senses.
Yes.
Than there being a supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
Definitely.
Business question for you, because you said that you were you working at the clinic that you eventually took over, or did you take over a different clinic than where you were at?
Same clinic.
Same clinic. Same clinic.
Yep.
Okay. Was it someone that was retiring from that clinic, or were they moving, or?
This was a very unique situation. I do want to try to bring up. It's interesting. So the guy that I worked for and bought his practice, awesome guy, started his practice in Edmond in like the early 80s and had a very successful large chiropractic practice in Edmond. And in 2006, he was a big hunter and was out on some hunting property in Western Oklahoma. And it was during like a really dry time and burn ban and all that kind of stuff was going on. Well, his truck caught on fire and he couldn't get out in enough time, barely lived. But like third of his body had 3rd-degree burns. And when I met him, he literally had palms, thumbs, and nubs, no fingers.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this happened in 2006. I graduated 2009 and started working for him in July of 2009. What had happened was he had after his accident, he had hired there was like 2 different docs over that like kind of 3-year time span. But the guy that was hired, the most recent one before me, was an older guy, veteran guy. He wanted to bring in an older veteran guy to keep the practice going and everything.
Sure.
And he was doing he was doing some shady stuff. He was literally trying to like open up another practice in town and like funnel people into that practice. And so he caught wind of it. They didn't say anything. This was like end of May, June, hired me in like June, started getting me credentialed. And then in July, they just plugged me right in and like just cut him out.
Wow.
Yeah. It was it was pretty rough, but anyways, but like when all that happened, I worked for him for 3 years, bought the practice. I kind of lost my train of thought. What was your original question on?
How did you end up? How did that opportunity come in to fruition of you being able to purchase the practice?
Yeah, so because of his accident, he was not ready to in those times, because those older veteran guys wanted to buy the practice from him, and he wasn't ready at the time. I think he was ready, but his wife was still kind of holding on to it, and it's probably for obvious like financial reasons and stuff. But then by 2012, so. September of 2012 is when it was like mine moving forward. So that summer we started negotiating on the wife and him are like ready to just be done with it.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. That is a crazy story.
Yeah.
I gotta, that's not even the end of the story. So in 2010, he became at that time the 3rd guy in the country to receive a double hand transplant.
Oh my God!
He was on Good Morning America and everything.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Richard Edwards. You can look him up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when you say a double hand transplant, like how? Like okay, what's the end result here? Like what's that?
So man, way out of my expertise, but from like what I understand, a lot of hand transplants were never successful because they were always like soldiers that had gotten their like whole hand blown off in war or something, or like chopped off in a freak accident or something. And so they were trying to reattach the arm like at the wrist or in the forearm or something. Right, yeah. And so with him, if you guys remember me earlier saying he had just thumbs, palms, and then nubs, and his like fingers were literally like melted off. It was terrible, but he had some kind of reconstruction to kind of give him something back. But what they did when they did the transplant was they literally dissected back all of his like healthy nerves, tendons, arteries in his palm, pulled everything back from the carpal bones down in the wrist, pulled those all away, pulled all the dead disregarded tissue from that point on, other than the like tendons, tendons, nerves, and arteries in the palm area, in the front and back of the palm area, slid down the new hand, had 2 metal rods to support the radius and ulna, and reconnected all the tendons, nerves, arteries up in the palm. And they did it with both hands.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And like how successful was that?
It was successful to the point where he was able to keep the hands, like his body didn't reject him.
Yeah.
And he had like some mild movement, but nothing.
Yeah.
With all due respect to Dr. Edwards, like when you would shake his hand, it was like just like shaking like a dead fish.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like there was not much like strength or anything, just flaccid.
Right.
But he could like button his pants and zip his pants. He couldn't do that before.
I think anybody in that situation will take that upgrade.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Dude, modern medicine blows my mind. That is crazy. Because I mean, that is a quick explanation, and it's like you're actually in there. Like, how long of a surgery does that have?
It was
to be?
like 20 hours.
Oh yeah, because
like
it's just every
doctors.
little intricate.
How many bones and tendons are in the hand?
Nerves
oh my gosh.
Everything, man.
How complicated just your hand is.
It's
like
wild.
Intricate. That's crazy.
Might be wrong on this, but like I know when you're going through medical school, they start like placing you with like testing and all this stuff, and they start putting people in certain orthopedics or cardiology and all that kind of stuff. Some of the most elite top like testing students or whatever are going to neurology and hand orthopedics.
Wow.
I've heard that. I might be wrong on that, but
I feel like it's
just because the intricacies.
I was going to say
believe it.
hands are super intricate.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you get to think it's literally what we do with everything. Oh man, that's craziness.
Yeah.
How coordinated your hands have to be to use a keyboard, even.
Yeah, like just regular basic, we consider to be basic stuff.
Right.
But it's like,
not taking it for granted anymore.
Yeah, this is a crazy intricate thing, like you said. Man, that's cool. How has been the experience? 15 years. How has been running your own business and being able to kind of do that? Obviously with your wife working there too is super cool. I love the dynamic, getting to come and see both of you guys whenever I come in. But what is the last? Because 15 years. What's the last 15 years been like?
Yeah,
sum it up in one sentence.
Ups and downs.
Yeah,
ups and downs. Good, bad, ugly. But for the most part, I mean, we're alive. We're still kicking. Our heads above water. And in chiropractic, one of the cool things is we don't have to have super high overhead. Like with you guys, like I see this, like, oh my goodness, like all this inventory. Like, luckily for me, as long as I can pay the rent, pay my employees, like I can go and show up.
Right.
But business has been tough because I got into it wanting to help people. And then whenever I never was a super savvy business guy, and right as I was buying the practice, I started trying to get around some management groups. We can go down this path. I'm an open book about this kind of everything, but any of this stuff. But this is where I definitely, from a business standpoint, some management groups took me down paths that I did not want to go.
Yep.
It taught me how I did not want to practice.
Right.
And I waste a lot of time and money. But I know like the last, because 15 years of practice total, 12 where I've owned it. Let's see. Yeah, about 12 years because I've owned it since 2012.
Right.
The first probably couple years was rocky and we did fine, but really the last couple years is when we've really been able to finally get our purpose, get around the right people that can help mentor us in the right ways where we really need to go, to get rid of the fluff and just yeah.
We made a lot of mistakes in our first years. A big reason why the name of the podcast is The Unsuccessful Entrepreneur.
And I love it.
And so I'll share a little bit of our experience as well. And one area where we kind of differ in business, and I'm kind of curious on your experience when we were first getting into business. A big mentor for me personally was my grandfather, who was an extremely successful businessman, very, very savvy, very much knew what he was doing, gave the advice of we should look into buying an existing store as opposed to starting our own. Us being early 20-year-olds where little bit more gung-ho than we maybe should have been. And we're like, no, we want to start it from the ground up. We want to, build our reputation from day one. We don't want to have to take over. But when we opened up and there weren't any existing customers, was a little bit of a wake-up call and a little bit of that's maybe why we should have bought another business. So similar experiences, as there was definitely several years of a learning curve of just figuring out how to get people in the door and how to be a profitable business and how to grow. But yeah, it's that's always been something that's been on the back of my mind of man, what would our start have looked like if we would have bought an existing business as opposed to starting from the ground up? Because I can't say ours was the greatest experience.
But that was the path you took.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I was just kind of curious, what do you feel like it made it any smoother purchasing an existing business as opposed to starting from scratch at all?
So the fact that I was able to buy the practice, the one interesting thing about my situation was because of the doctor situation, I was the only treating doctor in the office. So for those 3 years, it wasn't like it was mine, not like that, but it was like I had been treating all these people, and it was
it sounds like, and I don't know, but it sounds like he was not able to treat people.
Yeah. No, he couldn't treat. And so when they, it was like a no-brainer for me to purchase the office because I had been pouring 3 years into these people. So like if they had been coming back by this point, I was hoping that it was because of me, you know?
Right.
And so starting from scratch would have been very tough. I think there was some pros and cons. The fact that I was able to buy an existing thing, that I had all those clients and patients and all that kind of stuff already there. But what I will say, I think one of the biggest cons is it's like pulling teeth, or it's like moving a ship, trying to make change in the office. So like it was like in chiropractic, we called it the 80s Mercedes days. So it was like when insurance reimbursement was amazing and chiropractors were making all this great money. Like he had the like old school 80s Mercedes office, like just old school, outdated, just kind of an insurance, kind of milking the insurance thing. Yeah. And at this point, the insurance didn't even pay for these therapies anymore. It was like there was just so much outdated equipment. And so I had to really basically make everything new from the inside out. And it just took forever because, when you have people that have been coming in and experiencing this kind of thing and you start changing it, they're like, what the heck?
What's happening?
What's happening?
Why are we changing this?
Yeah, you start changing things too fast, and that can get people to kind of, get spooked and maybe stop coming or whatever. Yeah. So it just took, that was one of the biggest things that I could say is probably a negative from buying an existing business, was that it just took forever to make the change that we really wanted to make.
A whole different set of challenges where we dealt with our challenges of us not starting with no existing customers, so therefore no income. But at the same time, didn't have to deal with. We did get to kind of set the standard right from day one. Yeah. So pros and cons to both. It sounds like so, and that's what we were curious on. But yeah, and very much why we were like, we'll do so well that we'll be able to get customers in. We know how to do that. We didn't know how to do that. We figured it out though. So.
Well, I think one of the things that where, I think your business is successful, and I think it's similar to the way that, Triad and Define and all that kind of stuff is ran too, is within your industry and within our industry, the thing that I think shows through and why you have the clients that you do now is the trust and belief that you are genuinely here to help. And I think that that's so cool because, I have a decent amount of experience with chiropractors. I've gone to chiropractors for a long time. I've known chiropractors very closely, and there's different ways to be a chiropractor.
Yes.
That is for sure.
Yes.
And to me, you are like every moment I've ever had with you in the office or out of it, it is the epitome of you are just trying to help somebody feel better and actually heal them and actually help in the ways that you know how to make their life better. And I think that at the end of the day, with things changing and new therapies or whatever's going on, like at the end of the day, I think that that's the thing that will always shine through for you is like people know you and people who've been coming to see you know your intentions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that is the thing that will always carry. I think, I know you and I have talked and heard, I'm sure you've heard a million more horror stories than I have of how some chiropractors out there have their own way of doing it. Yeah. Not dissimilar, to the supplement industry. There are people that do it a way that we feel like is very honorable and very just, and then there's a way of doing it that we think is junk.
You might be able to make some quick money.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
And that's the thing where it's people are savvy enough to know the difference.
Yeah.
I think people who like to run it the junky way, no matter what industry it is or what business it is, I think those kind of people, they don't give people enough credit. People see through that.
Yeah. I definitely think people pick up on it eventually for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the cool thing, you get, and again, not to say anything bad about anybody, but it's the like, oh, I need to see you. Oh, this, like, oh, I've seen this before. This is 38 weeks. It'll be
$5,000 up front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be, it's a pretty intricate thing. We'll need to put you on the decompression table. That's it. Yeah. And you're like, what in the world is happening here?
It's a high pressure cell. In general, like even this was a saying that was being said whenever I was going through chiropractic school, that there's two different types of chiropractors in general, that there's straight chiropractors and then mixer chiropractors. It doesn't matter about the name, but basically mixers were the guys and gals that would mix and match exercise, soft tissue work, adjustments, and like mix and match, whether if it was a physical therapy modality or a chiropractic modality or whatever, whatever got people better, like that's like mixers would integrate that kind of stuff in. Right. And then straights were, not trying to get too much into it. Chiropractic came out in like the late 1800s, and it came from a guy. It really came from this magnetic healer. He wasn't even a medical doctor, any kind of doctor, and his name was D.D. Palmer. And he started writing some of the early writings in chiropractic, and he was a magnetic healer. He just talked about healing, and so it came from. It was the late 1800s. I mean, medicine was doing leeches and lobotomies. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, you know what I mean? It was
shit was weird.
Shit was a weird time for everybody.
Right.
And so he was talking about like,
I always laugh when you see those like, oh, your wife's crazy. Like she needs some meth, or like she needs heroin.
I remember hearing a story about like someone getting prescribed radiation, like for just like I think shoulder pain.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you need some radiation.
Take these radon pills.
Right. It's like, oh, you're hearing the ghosts. You need to do some heroin about it.
Right.
Here's some cocaine.
That's exactly right. So it was a weird time. So that's where it came from, but it came from this, your body's own ability to heal. And so there is some like truth in that. Like I think all of us can like agree, like if you cut your arm, it heals. Like your body is self-healing. Like you just got to be able to tap into that. Now, some chiropractors that are, especially in some of the very extremes, it gets like super dogmatic and like to the point of like being religious, where it's like, we just need to adjust you to get your body's healing ability to turn on, and it's like they don't do anything else but just manipulate or adjust whatever they think needs to be adjusted. And there's like 100 different like techniques on how to do that. Some will do just the upper neck, some will do the full spine. Like there's like, anyways, like from that viewpoint, like there's some people, those are the people that might get way out there and that are, the woo woo, when they're just like doing just like, we're going to release your energy and like all that kind of like energy work and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like that is in that kind of group. Now, even now, just like in the kind of more like flash fast forwarding into like this day and age, there really is a big push for evidence-based chiropractic. And that's where I have been getting and rubbing elbows and getting in the circles of the evidence-based chiropractic crowd for at least the last 5 to 7 years. And I even felt like I kind of came a little late to the party. Like I didn't realize there was such this big, push going on out there. I was the mixer where I was like mixing and matching things. But getting around these evidence-based circles, it has been a huge game changer for how I approach practice and business.
Right.
And it's really the future of manual medicine. In the future, it probably won't be in our lifetimes. We're not going to be able to tell the difference between a good chiropractor or a physical therapist.
Right. And I think we have already started to see the lines blending on that in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Because like we've even talked about, like I'll go see, a physical therapist sometimes, Bobby, shout out Bobby. But it's like, I'll go see him and it's just for, but the amount of overlap, right, that is good. And I think I'm able to bridge the gap between you guys too, to be able to like communicate like what's going on a little bit on both sides. But like, I think through that, I've gotten to have like certain things from both of you that have been like super awesome for me to really progress with the amount of training and stuff that I'm doing right now. Like, bumps and bruises, things not being the way they should be is going to happen. Tightness, whatever. And, it's been a really cool thing having you guys in conjunction together to, find ways to do this. But what's so funny is sitting on either of your tables is not that different of an experience in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Or like Cassidy, like Cass down in Norman at Ad Labs is another similar kind of thing where like, he's kind of the same way, like he's got the gym in there. And so like he's got some like little weights and stuff. But again, very similarly to when I've gone to see you, it's, hey, what is, I know we've done, we've worked a lot with like directional preference stuff and like ART kind of like active release therapy stuff. And, and then I go to Bobby and I get like dry needled and some like different stretching done and some different workouts that are kind of given to me. And it's like between the two, it's like you see very much how these like intertwine. And I think that that's the thing that I appreciate, not just about you, but I think that that is where, a lot of this is going kind of from both directions because you're also seeing a lot more physical therapists doing like manipulation, popping people, right?
Yeah.
Popping your back, popping your neck or whatever.
Because manipulation works. I mean, that's really the bottom line. I mean, they're doing it because it helps people and chiropractors wouldn't be around to this day if manipulation didn't help people. I mean, that's the reason. I mean, if chiropractic completely was just fluff, it would have faded a long time ago.
Right.
But just because of manipulation being such a powerful tool, that in itself has kept chiropractors in business.
Right.
And if we can figure out how to get rid of the fluff and figure out what's like super pragmatic and going to get results for people, like that's what it's about. And I just kind of had a little bit of not an epiphany, but just kind of a nice way to maybe kind of separate the difference between chiropractors. A good evidence-based chiropractor is going to work towards getting a accurate diagnosis to be able to treat something. Your straight chiropractor is just going to want to like adjust like misalignments that could be affecting your nerves from firing right.
Right.
And it's just, there's just way more to
it. There's a big difference in those things. And again, and it's not to say, everybody can have their own opinion on styles of chiropractic, obviously.
Yeah.
I know I'm a firm believer in the like mixing style, even back when I was in Springfield, and going to my chiropractor there where it was the same kind of thing. Like for him, obviously he had like a different practice. He was a cash only guy. So like he stayed away from the insurance side of things. And I feel like that happens. And I could be wrong. You correct me. It's like that just kind of keeps someone else out of dictating how you treat somebody.
Yeah.
And so, but like he was a completely cash-based guy, and it was cool because not dissimilar to you, like you're on a schedule, and I'm probably your worst client whenever you're on a schedule, because we always just start talking, and like we always come out of the back room, and like your wife's always kind of looking at us like, you guys done talking? We're like, yeah.
She gives me the look like, hurry the hell up.
Yeah, right.
Someone's waiting on you.
Right. And it's like, oh, sorry. Yeah. But even with him, it's like, we're going through, we're talking back and forth. We're spitballing different things. Like, hey, what about this? Oh yeah, this seems to be working for me. Or like, when we were working, I had an issue where I had some kind of like a pinched nerve in my shoulder. It's getting some numbness in my fingers. And, what people traditionally think of as a chiropractor is like, oh, he went in and like popped your neck, and then you got feeling back in your fingers and you were fine. And it's like, no, that's not really how it works. It's like, sure, we had like manipulation therapy and different things that kind of like help me, allow that to be relaxed in a healing state. But then we started working a ton of like directional preference stuff, and working the muscles, and why are they firing this way? And why, do I have, some kind of imbalance or literally a directional preference of like my body goes this way. And so we start working on that. And then, we find some different things that work for me. And then now I'm like, and then it's a couple weeks later and it's fine. The numbness
is gone.
The numbness is gone. Back, right? Yeah, no, it's not been back at all. It's been great.
So just to nerd out on exactly what you had since you brought it up.
Yeah.
In the diagnosis world of musculoskeletal, there is an amazing technique. It's called MDT, or commonly gets called McKinsey method. Robin McKinsey was a physical therapist in New Zealand in the 70s. He's passed away now, RIP. But he came up with McKinsey or MDT method. It's not only is it a technique, but it's like a way to diagnose and classify like subsets of back pain or causes of back pain or referred arm and leg pain. And so one of the most common things is something, and Thomas just made my day by bringing up directional preference, because they literally reference it as it's called a derangement is the name of the diagnosis, but derangements are rooted in directional preference. And from, of course, a lot of Jiu Jitsu, Thomas is getting the back of his head pulled on a lot. He's getting all kinds of stuck, restricted joints, tight muscles in the back of his neck, upper back. And if we were just adjusting alone, maybe the numbness would have got better. Maybe it would have reduced a little bit. Who knows? Maybe nothing would have happened. Maybe it would have went all the way.
Right.
But if I remember right, it's like from the first adjustment or two, we weren't maybe making a ton of gains. And then once we started bringing in those directional preference, mainly the neck retraction, boom, we found his exact directional preference. We kept adjusting, worked the directional preference, and then boom, everything turned the corner.
Right. And it's like, and through that, we got little exercises and things that I could do that I still do today.
Yeah.
Like, and those are the things that, again, like, I think the idea and like kind of what we're getting at is like, can you be out of alignment? I'm putting air quotes because that's like, a weird thing. But like, yes, I think you can be, right?
Yeah.
But the deeper question, and I think this is the thing that I appreciate about you and these other chiropractors that I've appreciated, is just like you said earlier, why? Why are we? Is it because we sit all day at work, and
that's a big part of it?
Or is it, because I do jiu-jitsu and I'm getting my neck yanked on? Or is it, you're playing this sport or doing something like this that's kind of causing this? Or maybe you have a muscular imbalance. Like I went a long time having like some QL issues, and that, that first chiropractor, physical therapist guy that I was kind of talking about kind of helped me. And we found, through different testing and different things, that I had like a tight hip flexor that was leading to like underactive, like abdominal firing. And it was like able to, through some different things and some different workouts and some different stuff, we were able to get that. And that was able to take the stress off of the QL on that side of having to be my main stabilizer for my upper body. And it's like, again, like, that is not always the traditional thing you think of when you hear chiropractor, but again, it's like, okay, well, this is happening. Your back hurts, but why? Yeah. And I think that that's where the true healing side of things comes in,
right? Because
again, if you were just opening pathways, or however they put it, it's like the sneaky part about that. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I can say this and you can't, but it's like, that just sounds like a way to have somebody come back forever, no matter what.
That's yes. Yeah. It's a great business model.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
It's like you just keep stringing them along. I mean, that's what a lot of, and a lot of people, the public feels that way.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are like the small percentage that, love their chiropractor and they're going to believe everything they say and they're just going to keep going back and they get a benefit. And if they get a benefit, great.
Yeah. Who are we to judge?
I don't think that's the gold standard and moving forward for humanity. Like that is not the way.
Yeah. We try and do things very similarly in the sense that, man, we could, if someone comes in and they're trying to lose weight, we could get you on some fat loss pills and send you on your way. But instead we try and blend the lines, which is again, really nice to hear that in the chiropractic physical therapy world that it's, I've heard it where there are instances where they butt heads and argue, which one's more efficient, the other one's not at all kind of deal. So it's nice that it's blending, because you think about the human body, it's a skeletal structure with muscles around it, right?
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear that there's a blend. So us in store, we, yes, we can look at some supplements that will potentially help make it easier for you to lose body fat. And it might be something as basic as weight loss pills. It might be something more complex if we dive into it. But the main thing is we want to also be changing habits and getting you to the point where you can long-term lose weight, not just lose 15 pounds. And then when you get off of this, you gain 15 back and now you got to come back and be purchasing forever. So maybe a terrible business model in that sense of we might lose some sales because we're helping people create long-term success or long-term results. Right.
But we're finding the why.
But at the same time, hopefully that creates enough of a reputation for ourselves that gets passed along to other people of these. If you go here, they care. Exactly. You'll actually see long-term progress and not just be stuck in this cycle of gaining and losing weight.
Right. Well, once you gain trust in them, you are going to be their nutrition expert. They're going to come back to you every single time they have an issue. Like that. And that's how I think of it. Like, for instance, like what Thomas was like with the neck and the directional preference thing. When people have an issue, some people do have to be put on not some, like there are definitely people that have to be put on a treatment plan. Like you have to make changes somehow, some way. Mm-hmm. A lot of that is them doing self-corrective exercises, stretches, etc. And then a big part of what I'm doing is teaching people how to take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. Like I know at the end of the day, there's still going to be times where they're going to need to be adjusted and they're going to have an injury. They're going to have a slip and fall. They're going to have do something to their low back at the gym or just whatever. And it's like, I want to be able to teach people how to take care of themselves and educate them as much as humanly possible. And then once that knowledge base on their own kind of ends, like you are going to be that guy that they're going to go to that they trust to go get help.
Right.
So I think that's beautiful, man. You're building clients for a lifetime.
Building the trust is the main thing. If you go the opposite route of creating a cycle where they have to come back to be able to see results, there's no trust built. And in my opinion, eventually those people will stop coming. Yeah. But if you build trust and you help those people make long-term results and they eventually are like, I actually want to, run a 5K, or I want to, start getting into powerlifting and they'll need other supplements to be able to do that. Or now we're not taking the stuff specifically for weight loss anymore.
Yeah.
We're transitioning over to be doing some stuff to help you do some really cool things. So, but and you don't get that unless you have that trust in the first place. So, you mentioned one thing earlier I kind of wanted to touch on, as far as, because I definitely, I think about business a lot. I think it's a thing that I'm just generally very interested in. And you mentioned that you got into it because you wanted to help heal people.
Yeah.
And I can't say that I definitely really enjoyed the idea of business, and it's a big reason why I got into it in the first place. I think I'm coming from a spot where my morals wouldn't let me charge anybody for anything unless we were actually helping them. So
nice.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. if it wasn't for my wife, I'd be treating everybody for free.
So that's where I was going to get to is like, okay, so I thought about this of like, okay, so we're a business and we have to charge, and we can't obviously purchase a product for $40 and then sell it for $40 because we don't make any money. But that was like a good realization for me that like, I almost got to this point where I started feeling bad of like, okay, like especially when we got to a point with the business where I was able to write myself a paycheck. And I'm like, man, I almost feel kind of weird about this, about taking a profit and like these people paying the money that they worked hard for these supplements, and us charging more than what we paid for them and us making a profit, even though that money is going to like a roof over our heads and food for our daughter's mouth. Like it still just felt weird. Like I just didn't feel totally right about it. And it was like, okay, like, and I know we've had to, I feel like it becomes more of a spectrum more than like this simple black or white thing of good business and bad business. I think there are definitely some telltale signs of doing things a morally sound way and a non-morally sound way. But at the same time, if you truly create a spectrum, if you look at one end of the spectrum, if we were truly doing things only to help other people, we would purchase a whole bunch of supplements and give them away for free. We wouldn't survive very long that way. Which is, and I think it's a good example of why it can be a difficult thing to really find a good balance of helping people, but making sure you're doing enough to just keep yourself in business. It can be a difficult moral dilemma in a sense. So, and everybody has to find that line. And why I honestly kind of think this is a little bit off the cuff or a little just kind of popped in my head, but I feel like the way you run a business is a little bit of a projection of your morals deep down. What are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do? So,
the way chiropractic pay is structured, for the most part, you get paid by how many people you get your hands on. And so that is another reason why you have offices that, want to just adjust you and try to see as many people as they can. And I mean, that's how they make more money. And so they want to, have 3-day work weeks and take vacations and have retirement and all that kind of stuff. And I have literally intentionally made the decision. I will happily see less people, intentionally take less money compared to my colleagues.
Right.
Even though I feel like I'm doing a better job. And not to be a little jaded about that. But,
I would be.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I feel the same way about us.
Well, I wish I would love to see in the future of like actually getting paid or reimbursed on like our outcomes.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
There's talk about that, but it's I intentionally take less money, or I intentionally see less people so I can try to still deliver a high quality of care.
Right.
And I just know that I sleep better at night, that it's just maybe going to take me a little bit longer to meet my financial goals of paying my debts off and stuff like that. Like I'm going to get there.
Right.
But it's just going to take me a little bit longer than some other guys, but I'm going to do it ethically. I'm going to sleep good at night and I'm going to feel good about it and know that I've helped a lot of people.
Yeah. You know that your intentions were honest and like you were really trying to help people and try to do it. Cause my experience also with, the chiropractor that I was familiar with, like, they would, I'm trying to remember what they would say. I think they got a knock on their door, like the gentle move along knock. If they had a patient in their room for longer than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Dude, what can you do in 2 minutes?
What can you do in 2? Dude, we aren't even done bullshitting for 20 minutes, you and I, when I'm there. Like we haven't even started. We're like, oh yeah, you got to get on the table, Thomas. I'm like, oh yeah.
I mentioned it earlier, but I was involved in some of these management groups. They teach you that. They literally teach you 2 minutes with the patient. They tell you to say 10 words or less to people. I'm serious. They will tell you to, when someone's like really like just unloading on you, like my back and blah, 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 blah. They're just this emotional and they're just like verbal, diarrhea on you. You just literally shake your head, nod, raise your eyebrows. You don't say words. Like if you start talking, this just perpetuates the conversation longer, and you're going to be in there longer with them, and you're going to create this monster in this person where they think they can just come in here and emotionally unload on you and all this stuff. And then there's like, to some degree, like you want to draw the line where you don't have somebody coming here and just dumping on you all the time. But at the same time, it's like 2 minutes. They'll literally, they'll adjust 3 segments on your back. They'll do everything. So there's literally a technique called prone specific. And it's literally because you stay face down. Like you don't have to move side on your back, all that kind of stuff, because it's less time, less movement. Like it's
pop, pop, pop. See you next week.
Wow. They teach you like the eyebrow movements and everything.
Yes. And there's some guys that are so hardcore, they won't even say see you next week or twice next week. They hand signal to their front desk, and then the girls handle dealing with the patient and telling them when they need to come back in.
They're like a pit crew.
It's
literally
serious.
Yeah.
There are guys in the city, guys, that will, I don't know if it's, I mean, I believe them because I don't see why they would lie. And but like there are some guys that will see 500 people in 3 days.
Goodness.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
That's wild. So
it's like it's actually freaking amazing.
And it's
like, I can't even.
Like it's literally like amazing to the definition of like I can't believe that that's impossible.
Yes.
And it's like
I would never do it, but how is that possible?
Just the fact is kind of impressive, but like not in a good way.
It's a lot easier when your insurance notes all code the same thing.
Like I had somebody ask me once, this young guy, he's like his dad's an attorney. He's just a real like outgoing guy, and he like works for his dad where he'll go around the metro and just like go into chiropractors' offices and just kind of keep their kind of name relevant. And if you have a PI case, send them our way and all that kind of stuff. And they try to buy you lunch, just trying to keep their name. Anyways, he pulls me to the side one day, and he's like, I won't say the doctor's name, but he was like, hey, do you have any reason why that every single bill from this doctor is the exact same? It's like, because he's doing the same fucking thing every single time, man, for the exact same times. Like, it's insane.
How many people, and that's the thing, is like you said, it's like, it's the NASCAR pit crew. Like, it's like, they're doing the same thing. They're changing tires and then see you later.
Maybe more money today. And here's maybe it's my pipe dream, but I feel like if you do things the right way, that you eventually, it may not pay off immediately. It probably won't pay off immediately. It definitely didn't for us. But if you do things the right way enough times, you'll eventually build a reputation where you don't even have to market yourself. You don't have to put a lot of effort in. You have such a good reputation that you got people breaking down the door wanting to come in because you've spent the years building that. Again, maybe it's a pipe dream. I really hope it's not.
I think like I know
I feel that way too, man.
I've seen it, and I think of its own version of it. Like you say, it's a pipe dream, but it's when somebody posts in a group on Facebook or a thing on Facebook about being injured, I know that I am like as soon as I see it, I'm like, go back to wellness. You know what I mean? It's like somebody in the jiu-jitsu community recently posted about having a pinched nerve in their shoulder, and like, who did people recommend to go see? And like, people from our gym are like, you go see Jeff. Like, and I was able to comment on there, like, you literally just helped me with this. And so those kind of things, like you got people in your corner, you know what I mean? Like, where the people who have your trust and the people who know why you do it and how you do it, I think those people just continue to grow, and you get to see more of them, because, kind of like we were talking about before, where it's like my treatment plan now has turned more preventative than it has been, anything else. And that's, between you and Bobby, and I don't see Bobby as much as I see you, but like, but the goal there is not always like, hey, this is hurting. Hey, this is a problem. It's, hey, keep me feeling good. Keep me loose.
Keep mobility.
Right. Keep my mobility good. Keep the yank on my neck. Yank me the other way. You know what I mean? Like, even out the yanks.
Yes.
And then that way, it's kind of funny because we do the Y strap where you like pulls my head. So when we are kind of doing that, we kind of yank me. I don't think that's the science way of describing it. But
no, I think yank is actually in textbooks. Right?
Yeah. He's like writing his notes. He's like, we're going to yank Thomas. That's why it's called the Y strap. The yank strap.
We yanked Thomas's neck today with the Y strap.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. We'll send that in. But it is one of those things that I think you start to build that in too, where people start to see the other side of like, hey, I don't, like, just like anything, I don't go to a dentist only when I have a cavity, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm trying to be preventative. I'm trying to have these things. And, I think for me, because I'm training, I'm doing jiu-jitsu 5 times a week. I'm running 3 times a week. I'm typically lifting 2 to 3 times a week. Like my training hours are like typically well into like the high teens of like hours in training that I'm like doing in a week. And it's like, well, if I'm doing that much, there's plenty of things that can be done to keep me mobile, to keep me in alignment, to keep me from, overcompensating or something that's going to be a hindrance down the road for me. And so that's a huge part of why I go and see you now is, tomorrow I don't have any like, nothing's hurting on me, but it's going to keep me from being hurt,
I'm so glad that you brought this up. So this is an interesting topic. Like even in, I mentioned evidence-based chiropractor group. In the evidence-based chiropractor group, the word maintenance or supportive care can be toxic and like fighting words to them. Like if you maybe don't fix people in 2 to 3 visits, like they don't like some of the hardcore, more extreme guys of that very scientific rehab model are like, nope, that's it. There's nothing else I could do for you.
Right.
And that is completely silly too.
Right.
And there's definitely been this push, like my clinical mentors at Gestalt Education, that's a podcast that they put out. So plug in them. They had a guy on their podcast within the last couple of weeks. I was like this hardcore researcher guy, and he was all about maintenance care, basically the type of care you're coming in for 1 to 2 times a month to try to, not having symptoms, just coming in to get a just like an adjustment, just to keep mobility going.
Right.
So, I mean, listen to all the things you just described. I mean, you're running a couple times a week, you're lifting a couple times a week, you're doing jiu-jitsu a couple times a week, you're running a full-time job in a business and all these things. Like that's a lot. Right. It's a lot of physical stress, emotional stress, all those types of things. And that can just stiffen up your body. Yep. And getting some adjustments, could be preventative. And it all depends on your goals too. Like whatever the goals of the patients are. I tell people my goals are your goals all the time. Like if your goal was to get out of the pinched nerve and get the numbness to go away. Once that went away, if that was your goal, see you later, Thomas. Let me know when you need me next. But Thomas is like, hey man, because of all my jiu-jitsu and the running and all the stuff I'm doing, do you think it's good for me to come in like every now and then to get an adjustment? Yeah, hell yeah, come on in. It's like there's a benefit to that.
I think from my perspective, I think there's a huge benefit from that for a couple of reasons. One is like, I know, I've had this body for a while now, and like I know that like it's just like stretching or anything. It's my ability to stay on top of it and to stay on top of my mobility, and especially muscle tightness. Like I get really tight, especially like up in my like mid to upper back. And if I'm not having some kind of therapeutic thing towards that, whether that's a foam roller regularly, whether that's maybe getting adjusted, and we say adjusted when I say with you, but it's like, half the time you're massaging and loosening up and getting all those things, and then it's like, okay, now this is moving, you know what I mean? And the other thing that I think is massively underrated, that's kind of hard to metric, is the like having, not only seeing you at the gym, but not everybody has that luxury, but is having I go and see you every 2 weeks. And if I'm like, my hip feels kind of weird, I'm going to talk to Jeff about that. And it's like having that access where it's like, that's been one that I've dealt with more frequently or more recently, has been like some weird like hip feeling. Right. And I think that's just because my added running and some different muscle firing and stuff. But it's like, I'll go in there and you're like digging into my hip and stretching me and moving me all around. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, okay, cool. Like that's really what I needed. That pinch is gone and I'm feeling better. And it's like having, just like, it's kind of a weird way to put it, I guess, but it's like a part of where that's a benefit. It's just like having you at, like, I know that, if something's bad enough to hurt for 2 weeks, then I'm like, well, I'm going to go see Jeff anyway. So like, it's kind of, you're already there.
Well, to expand on the research the guy was talking about on that podcast, one of the things that everyone or a lot of people associate is once you go to the chiropractor, you have to go for the rest of your life, right? And that's kind of what we're starting to talk about. in this study, and this researcher guy on this podcast, he was basically saying, which was really cool and liberating to me, which was there are a group of people that absolutely benefit from ongoing adjustments, and then there's people that don't.
Right.
And so there's going to be people that, because of their lifestyle and because of their body and anatomy and all these other factors, they don't necessarily need to be manipulated regularly or adjusted regularly, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But when you're Thomas and you're doing jiu-jitsu a couple times a week and you're doing all these things, like that, he's going to benefit from getting some ongoing adjustments because he's putting a lot on his body. And so those are going to be some things that can stiffen him up, create those muscle imbalances or increase tension and tone in the muscles or joint stiffness and joint restriction. And so Thomas benefits from that. Now, of course, Thomas makes the decision if he wants to keep doing that. Right. But there are also people in this group that might have just chronic pain. Chronic pain is kind of just reoccurring low back pain is more of a way of saying it, because chronic pain could be something different. That could just be, I have a shitty life and a shitty job and I just hate my life. You know what I mean? Everything hurts. But people who have like reoccurring back pain, reoccurring neck pain, reoccurring like joint problems, if they do get regular manipulation, like these were a group of people that would benefit. And they actually showed like they followed these people, and if they just regularly stayed adjusted, they actually spent less time in the chiropractor overall throughout the year, and they didn't have those like nasty exacerbations of acute pain. Right. And so like that was really cool, and so hopefully like that's what we're going to try to, do with you for somebody that's very physical and very demanding on their body. Right.
Well, and I think that's what I think has been always cool. And one of the things I appreciate about you is like, I'm always like telling you about people that in your industry and way of doing things that I like, and I think you get along with and stuff. And
I want to meet him.
Yeah, right. But to kind of like shout out Cass, who we've had on the podcast before, I know a way that he was kind of doing that was because he doesn't do insurance at all. I think he's just cash based. I might be wrong on that, so don't quote me. But but I know at least he was. I think he still is. But he does like a membership, and it's like a very affordable membership, and it allows you to come in, I think, twice a month for adjustments and any other treatments that are kind of offered. And then on top of that, if you need additional ones, you get a bigger discount on, coming to see that. So it's like the membership kind of in that is encouraging the maintenance style of things. And obviously that, of course, that's, a benefit from him to have like regular customers. And I don't see any problem with that because I personally see the value in the maintenance stuff. But it is a way to incentivize like, hey, coming in here, staying mobile, and I don't even just mean like stretching mobility, but like literal bone movement, you know what I mean? Yep. All of those kind of things I think can be super important. And so shout out to Cass, because I feel like he's another guy kind of in this realm who's like, hey, like he's very honest about the same way. He's like you said, I know a treatment plan is one of those where maintenance can be kind of like looked down upon if it's like, there are going to be people who need to come. And like when I was doing my shoulder, you were like, hey, let's bump up our treatment frequency. Like we want to see you more frequently, because going 2 weeks, like that's a long time if we're not getting the right exercises and we're not making adjustments when we need to. Right. But it is, again, everybody that walks in the door isn't being told, okay, this is it's like each thing has a cost almost. It's like, oh, you hurt your neck? Well, that costs 37 visits, or like that costs 48 visits. Yeah. And it's, but I think the positive side to that and where those things can kind of work. And the analogy that I'll kind of use is within our industry, the nasty term, if you're on one side of things, is commission, right? Commission's a nasty term, and it can be to me too. I kind of cringe a little bit when I hear commission because it's not because commission is bad. It's because it's been bastardized by all the people doing it wrong. There's nothing wrong with commission, and there's nothing wrong with any way that people do commission. But you see where some of them are not so great, I guess I should say that.
It's a system that can be abused.
But it's a system that is regularly abused. And
maintenance is a great comparison to commission here. This is actually a really good comparison.
Right. And it's like, it's one of those things where, is it for everybody? No. But it's like, for businesses and certain things, those kind of things, and for people who could really benefit from maintenance, like those kind of things happen. And it's like, it's tough because, we don't do commission. We don't do like a direct commission technically within the store. We profit share. So it's like, you technically do, but you don't. It's not like this, I only make, if I sell you that bottle, I make $7. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't exist within the store. It's like, it's pennies, if that. And so there's no incentive to like push higher sales from somebody coming in the door or trying to sell them every different therapy that we offer, like you offer or something like that. There's no real financial benefit to it. The financial benefit comes from growing the store, more people coming to see us, like getting out in the community, more people wanting to be a part of the triad community, like those things, because it's a profit share. It doesn't matter if I sold it, Kevin sold it, whoever sold it, like we're all getting a nickel. Right. And so with that, again, that is a form of commission, but it is not the like overly bastardized way that it's been done, where you're putting employees into this situation through a company where they either make feast or famine. They dangle the carrot just out in front of them to make these very difficult to reach numbers or whatever, quotas. And then when they don't hit it, I only have to pay them minimum wage now. And it's like, that's a joke, And so it is interesting because I can resonate with that of like, there are things that are fine, but because they've been bastardized and used wrongly by the bastards, then it's like, that's when it becomes a problem. And then that makes it hard for everybody, to be able to talk about it or be open about it, because they're just assuming, okay, here we go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That is a brilliant model, by the way. I love that.
Thank you.
Because if you guys have, people within the store trying to sell things, I mean, it just, as a customer, I mean, you're going to feel that. Yeah.
Ew.
Like
so
GNC,
gross.
Right? What is it, GNC?
Yeah. Well,
Well, sorry if I.
Oh, no, we don't care.
Okay.
They aren't listening.
But I just think that's awesome, because one of the things that I've always thought about when I want to hire someone for my business is, how can I create, like, I know it's impossible at the end of the day because they're not part owner, but like, how can I create something where they take ownership of the practice? Like I try to tell, like,
even their paycheck reflects ownership.
Yeah, right. And I want to pay them or make them feel like they are valued as if they are that part of the owner or part of the culture and the industry and of your business. I think that's awesome. And
well, I think it plays. Oh, go ahead, Kip.
And it definitely comes from. I mean, to kind of expand on Thomas, what he was talking about a little bit, as well as to hopefully, so to even explain a little bit more of our model, it comes from every employee makes a certain percentage based on their position, and what they've been promoted to. They make a certain percentage of their store's gross margin dollar amount before expenses. So it's based off of all the products minus cost of goods sold for us. Obviously, we're retail, so that's a big factor for us. But again, the whole mindset that we're hoping to instill is again, like you said, like more ownership of hey, the whole goal here is to do well as a business long term, not to make a whole bunch of sales today. So your paycheck is more dependent on, so in a week's time, it's more dependent on or less dependent on you selling every single possible thing that you could to every single person that came in the door, and it's more dependent on you doing your part to the 100 people that you talk to creating more regular, more loyal, more supportive customers. And if you do that week after week, that builds on itself, and your paycheck slowly starts to look better and better if everybody's doing their part to do that, as opposed to, again, trying to sell every single person. And we even do, like, full disclosure, bonuses at the end of the year are even a little bit more of ownership minded, in the sense of it is how much the business has profited that year after expenses, where I look at expenses as more of my responsibility on how much the business is spending. The person that starts working in the store tomorrow, like passes their test and is just started working for us, they don't have much of an idea or obviously much say in what we're spending money on, how much we're spending money on. That's very much more mine. But as you work your way through the company, you have more and more say, more and more decision. So the bonus at the end of the year is based off of our profit after those expenses, so that you can even start to gain more ownership in the company or more of a sense of ownership in the company. So, but that's how we run our model. It's worked well so far.
Mm-hmm.
So
nice.
Well, and I think too, something that I'm sure you can resonate with, especially being a business owner and understanding, but it very much so with us, especially being a very customer service based business and, building relationships with these people. The joke that we always say, and we even talk about in interviews, ad nauseum, I feel like, is just so once you start working here, like, the polo never comes off. Like the triad polo never comes off. You're always an extension. You're always, if you're somewhere acting like a fool, the people remember you from work. And so it's one of those where part of it and part of the conversation is like, we want that ownership too, because ownership comes in, like you're saying, like part of the desire in that, but the positive, things that come from that are really cool are that, even outside of work, caring and maintaining themselves as if they were at work, that polo not coming off, the respect for the things that we have, the company itself, the business, the things, like not breaking chairs or stupid stuff, like I think that's a big part of it is like, if you can get that like fully immersed feeling where like, hey, you realize you're an intricate part of this company as well, a hugely intricate part of this company, like you are the front facing, you're the person, you're going to get associated with this as much as anybody else. It's like having that buy-in, is of the utmost importance, we feel like. And so it's really been a benefit for us, I feel like, as just a company as a whole, of doing it this way and having this kind of team mentality. And it allows us again to just continue to show, our employees like the morals and guidelines that like the company's built on, and that's what we want to continue to be projected when they're talking to customers or whatever that looks like. Never are you going to hear me say, working with somebody, oh, what did that person buy? Why did they buy that? Or like, why didn't they buy more? Maybe jokingly, we'll like kind of just be dumb, why didn't they buy $7,000 worth of stuff? Like just a joke. But I think building that into the culture, is where that buy-in really comes in, because people really feel a part of that.
I have had to catch myself joking one time. Actually, I think I've done this like 2 or 3 times, and I always have to like explain. But we'll have a customer in, and I'll be helping them, and it'll maybe be busy, and then that customer that I was helping is going to check out with another employee, and I'll joke around. I'm like, "Oh, you stealing my commission?" And like, just because it's obviously we know it's like. It does not matter. Yeah, it does not matter who checks anybody out. And then I'm like, wait, this customer might not know that.
Right. I was going to say, how does the client react?
And I'm like, just a heads up, we don't run off commission. So like, it's a total joke. Fine. Like as I realized, like, oh, I probably shouldn't joke about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to share something with you guys too, as I was telling one of my patients today as I was coming to do the podcast, and I was telling them about the podcast, and a couple of people that I told today, I just told a few people, and they're like, oh, tell me I want to listen to it and everything.
Yeah.
But I told them, I was like, hey, do you know Triad supplement? Is it Triad supplements, or is it
Triad Fitness Supplements Nutrition?
Triad Fitness Supplement Nutrition.
We go by anything. Triad Supplements, Triad Fitness.
I said Triad Supplements. I didn't quite know.
That's like that gets the point that people would know
what 3 of the 4 people told me when I brought up your guys' name? You know what they said?
Oh,
it's cool. It's a good thing. They're like, I see everybody wearing the t-shirts all over town.
Yeah.
So I thought you guys would like that.
We love that.
That's a really cool culture thing that you guys have created.
Our marketing is at least out there.
Yes, it is.
That's a good sign.
That is a good sign.
Yeah.
And I'm rocking my Triad shirt too.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's right.
Heck yeah.
We love
Awesome.
that. And that's good. Yeah. Hey, people know us. That there was a time, even when I was here, and even more so before I was here, where like you couldn't pay somebody to wear a Triad shirt.
That's true. Yeah. That's
well, they didn't know the unsuccessful entrepreneur yet.
Yeah, that's right.
They will know that too soon.
Yeah,
I was still being very unsuccessful at that point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. We love that.
Man, to give you a little bit of kudos, I know Thomas is definitely talking you up a lot, which is he doesn't always give a ton of kudos. So
checks in the mail.
Man, I have noticed. I'm starting to realize. I think we have a lot healthier Thomas on our hands. We used to have a Thomas that was always dealing with. He couldn't really do a whole lot of physical activity because his back or his QL or something was hurting, so it was hindering him being able to do a whole lot. But now here we are. I feel like I haven't seen him with issues.
No excuses now.
Honestly,
no excuses.
No, but for real though, this is like
not just that, but he's running and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So we have a lot healthier Thomas at work now, and I assume you have a big role to play in that.
Well, I would just be honored to be part of the, just to be considered part of the team of that.
Yeah, you are. Absolutely.
I mean, you put the work in, man. I mean, you get the most credit.
Yeah.
So.
But for it's funny, and to Kevin's point though, like it's not false. Like I do feel like this has been like a really healthy run for me, that like there has been times where I've like struggled with that, where it's like as soon as I really start to get the ball rolling on something, it's like like I just like something would happen and like my back would tighten up or whatever, and knock on wood, right?
Yeah.
But it's like I really have gone a long time without anything like overly serious. You know what I mean? Like granted, like the pinched nerve and stuff like that was kind of a bummer, but like again, it wasn't like debilitating stuff. And like anybody who's
doing what you want to do.
Yeah, right. Like I kept training. Right. Like I kept training. That's always like my sign, you know?
Absolutely.
But it has been, that I have, not that this is what we were going to talk about, but I do feel like the last several months, definitely, but, has been kind of the turn. I think a big part of it was getting married, leading up to getting married. I'm not married yet, but we're getting there. But is like taking care of myself in kind of a different way. And that's been exciting because with my I trust in my recovery because of my recovery team, homeboy over here.
Nice.
Because of my recovery team, I am now able to push a lot further than I ever have been before, because I don't have the fear as much, I guess, of like being hurt or being unstable or having an issue or something like that. Like those kind of things, I'm able to push a lot harder, and it's cool because like I think in a lot of ways, I'm gonna sound like a butthole when I say this, but I think in a lot of ways I do have a decent amount of like physical gifts that I do not feel responsible for earning all the time. Like Kaylin always hates me because she's like, you never have a bad in-body scan. And I'm like, I don't know, body by Chick-fil-A. But she's just messing with me. But it's one of those where it has been cool to continue to kind of push, I've even gotten to the point recently where I'll have days where I'm really just trying to like train my ass off in like a lot of different modalities and different things, just to see like, okay, well, how well can I recover for tomorrow? Like, how well am I able to push this and continue to push this, where it's like my favorite day of like talking about this, because I do think it's just funny, and we have to like I do have the leg up, or I guess the handicap, in the point that like, because I'm a large person, activities typically cost a lot of calories for me versus most people. So that does skew these numbers a little bit. But my favorite one was I did about an hour and a half of jiu-jitsu in the morning. I ran 10 miles right after jiu-jitsu class, went home, showered, just hung out, whatever, and then went back to evening class and did about 2 hours of jiu-jitsu in the evening, right? Man. my calories burned, my active calories, not my basal, not my like walking around steps or anything like that. Just through my 3 activities for the day, my active calories burns was 6,077 calories, which is bananas. But a big part of that day was like, hey, I'm going to push myself as hard as I can today, through different modalities and whatever, work through my recovery throughout the day. Like, how well am I able to jump from one to another without like sacrificing performance? And then how well am I able to do that, go home, shower, rest, recover, and be ready to go, because I had 8 a.m. jiu-jitsu the next morning. And so that was kind of part of it, was like, hey, if I can, because I'd done it on a Tuesday, so I had my morning class, then run, then the evening gi class, and then it was like no gi with Coach Bill at 8 a.m. the next day. And I'm like, am I gonna make it? Am I gonna be there? And I was there, and I felt great. And so that was cool. But I do think a big part of that is like, with pushing yourself that far and adding new training modalities or whatever, it's like taking care of yourself, whether it's through proper sleep, proper nutrition, obviously hydration, whatever. But even when it is above my head, which it definitely got to at times, having people like you in my corner, Bobby in my corner, just people, we are so blessed that I feel like I have so many people, I couldn't name all of them, like within this realm, that are friends of yours or mine or ours or just whatever. But I do really feel like that has made a really big difference on my ability to just push to something that I feel like I haven't been able to do. I really do genuinely feel like athletically in my prime right now, more so than I ever have been.
Nice. Recovery is so important. And you realize it the older you get.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's less room for error there. When you're younger, you could stay up late, party, eat like crap, and still show up to class and be fine. Know. But the older you get, and then you try to really push yourself. Right. And you're trying to do 2 classes a day and run 10 miles all on the same day. Like, you have to do recovery, or things like the QL is going to pop up. Right. The neck, the pinched nerve, like all these things your body's going to start breaking down.
Yeah, exactly.
So by doing all the recovery, man, I think it's huge. It's been a big reason to keep you going like you have.
Well, and again, I think you're kind of, touching back on the maintenance side of things. I do think it's like why that regimen has been so important for me.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, one thing you kind of brought up earlier, and obviously kind of jumping into jiu-jitsu as well as being a chiropractor that does jiu-jitsu, do you feel like you've gained any with especially the jiu-jitsu community growing as much as it is, being someone that understands what jiu-jitsu is so much more than I'm sure most other chiropractors?
Yeah. I mean, just being on the mats and grinding with everybody. I mean, you get the feeling of what it feels like to get your neck cranked and then walk around for the next week with it. It's hard to turn your neck,
Yeah.
And so I guess ask a question again. So
to even kind of expand on my question, do you feel like I guess for lack of better way of putting this, like, do you have a high percentage of people that are doing jujitsu that are clients of or patients of yours? Yeah.
So man, that's been and going back to kind of what we were joking about earlier about, I show up to class to hurt people to get business. Right. It's kind of been the running joke since I started doing jujitsu was, you just show up to, but it has been awesome because I am just by nature a sports head, and it just helped tap me into a really cool just niche of people that are like you guys that are very proactive about their health. It also tapped me into people that I never would have thought I would have ever met. Like doing martial arts, like MMA guys, like everyone kind of has their stereotype of like the meathead MMA guy. But what's so amazing to me about the jiu-jitsu person, whether if it's guy or girl, is they're very analytical. They're very intelligent people. They're sometimes not always the biggest, strongest, it's some of the coolest, most unique people I've ever met have been in jiu-jitsu. So it has helped my business in so many ways because it's just helped tap me into a community. Yeah. And it's a really cool community and a very nuanced community, but it's a sports community. Like I'm not trying to go be the Thunder chiropractor. I mean, but I'm tapped into the jiu-jitsu community.
Yeah,
and I'm totally pumped with that.
And that's been a big part for us as well. Is not just marketing to different demographics. It's genuinely being a part of those communities. For me, it's more bodybuilding as I've competed a couple of times before, and that's my style of training and the area I really enjoy. So I'm genuinely immersed within the community, and we've got Kaylin that is legitimately loves doing CrossFit, competes in CrossFit, that works at the Yukon store. She's the one that goes to the competition, is genuinely involved in that community, and so that's I feel like been a huge benefit to us. Is we've gotten very, very lucky to have a very wide spectrum of people that are involved in different areas of the fitness community. We've got people involved in powerlifting. We've got people involved in cycling. We've got people obviously involved in jiu-jitsu.
Couple now.
Yeah, couple now.
3 jiu-jitsuers.
Cool.
Who's the other ones?
Christian and Draven.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Are they going outsiders, or were they going to train?
Christian's family actually owns a gym in Blanchard, or part owners. They're the Minoy's gym that's out there. And then Draven trains with Kevin Williams at the Vibe. And Draven was a college wrestler and coaches wrestling at Putnam City or Putnam City North, one of the Putnam cities. But he's one of the assistant wrestling coaches. And so he's gotten into jiu-jitsu recently as well. So
very cool. And shout out to Kaylin earlier. She's really cool. We actually made it to the store first before we actually came back to the warehouse, and she was super cool, super nice.
Yeah. That's good to hear. She's really nice person. Yeah, the warehouse kind of hides back here. It's the storefront's very obvious for obvious reasons, and we want everybody to know where that's at.
Yeah,
but warehouse is a little bit of a
little more sneaky,
little hidden spot here. We got the name on the door, but no sign or any. I don't think we're on Google Maps. So
nice.
One of the things, and this is funny because this is my first thing that I thought of when you said that. The thing that I appreciate about you so much, because you are, like you even said, like a sports head, but like on top of that, like jiu-jitsu, obviously, but like playing sports with your kids, like whatever. You are probably, to be honest, you and Bobby would be the 2 people that if you came to me and you said, Thomas, you need to take 2 weeks off of jiu-jitsu, I'd do it.
Nice.
Because I know how much of a sacrifice that is,
yes,
right? Like I know what that actually means when it's like, I've been to doctors or different people or whatever, and they're like, oh, just stop doing, you hear all the time, just stop doing jiu-jitsu.
Is that hurt? We'll stop doing it.
Right. Like, okay, but like, I don't want to. That's the thing that keeps me happy.
That's why I'm in your office today.
Right. Exactly.
With that.
Right. And so it gives a unique perspective because you are involved and you understand what jiu-jitsu means to people, because it does mean a lot more than just like going to the jiu-jitsu gym and going to the regular gym are definitely different things, right? Definitely. And there's reasons why people really want to go to the jiu-jitsu gym. And if you were to tell me like, Thomas, hey, I think you should just be done doing jiu-jitsu and like maybe just do the regular gym, I'd be like, okay, cool. Yeah, right. You know what I mean? But you, on the other hand, I should clarify, you though, if you were to be like, Thomas, I really do think it would be a good idea if like, hey, your whatever's kind of messed up right now, I do think it would be a good idea for you to like take a few weeks off. I'd be like, damn it. Like I'd be mad at you, but I'd know it was coming from a place of being genuine, you know? It's like you, Bobby, and Zach Lasau would be the 3 guys that I love
Zach Lasau.
Oh gosh. And Zach, for people who don't know, Zach's one of my best friends. But he's a super smart guy, and he's finishing up med school soon. And but he's another one who like fully immersed in the jiu-jitsu community and understands what it means to tell somebody to not do something that they love, as opposed to just like, well, just stop doing it. It's like, ugh, I don't want to.
Yeah. And for you, I mean, you would totally respond to this, because it'd be like, Thomas, you can't do jiu-jitsu for the next 2 weeks because you have a disc herniation in your neck, bro. Like, you need to chill it out.
Like you really need to chill it out. And I'd be like, okay, cool. I will. If Dr. Jeff tells me not to train, I'm not gonna. Right. But the going joke that I have that I've said on the podcast before is that like I'll talk to if something's wrong, I'll talk to my actual primary care doctor, you, and Zach, and then whichever one of you gives me the the most green light of what I want to hear, that's who I go with.
You know, it's funny.
That's awesome.
You bring this up. I've actually got a funny story. This was years ago. Alyssa, I think I don't know. I was having Alyssa attempt to pop my back or give me massages or step on certain parts of it or whatever. But and she was like, you need to go see a chiropractor. So she picked the most convenient one to where we live. Yeah. I wish she would have picked you, because I think it would have been a better experience. I won't name where I went.
Yeah.
But where I went was, she got me a gift certificate, one-time visit. And there was a whole assessment with it as well, which was nice. They did a good job with that. Cool. But in the assessment, before we even got to any kind of treatment, was kind of going over some of what I do regularly. And in that time, they recommended that I didn't do any in the gym. I didn't do any kind of backloaded movements. So no squatting, not even Smith machine, no hack squatting, and to do no hamstring curls at all. Wow. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. You don't know what I go to the gym for. That is, you're telling me to not be who I am. Right. And it's it's a simple of I feel like you're telling me this of just oh yeah, easy enough. I just won't squat anymore. It's I can't.
Kevin, be a vegetarian.
Right. It was just,
I don't think you understand what I do every day.
Yeah, exactly. So all right, I will I'm hearing you, but I'm not going to follow that advice. I'll be conscious of okay, maybe that is what's causing some issues, so I can be a little bit more conscious about how often I'm implementing some of those movements and maybe how I'm doing them, and maybe that's helped a little bit. But yeah, it was you telling me to be not who I am. Right. So this is not a simple ask.
I don't want to get a gift certificate to hear I'm not who I am.
So I don't know if you guys have heard of this, or at least I bet you've heard this. So growing up playing sports, if you twisted an ankle, knee, a back, or something, did you guys ever remember hearing RICE or PRICE?
Yeah.
Which is rest, ice, compress, elevate, right? That is old school. That is not even what the standard is anymore when you have an acute injury.
Isn't the guy who came up with that refuted it himself? Was like, hey, this isn't a thing anymore. Don't do this. The guy who invented it.
Yeah, no, he's exactly right. I can't think of the guy's name, but the guy who actually, the RICE guy. The guy literally came out with that mnemonic, said that is not accurate anymore. That's not what the literature supports. The new mnemonic, and so when I hear doctors, for the most part, tell people just, oh, that hurts, we'll just stop doing it. Or to me, it's a chiropractor, okay, we want to do all these corrections and adjustments and do all this stuff, but it's stop doing everything you're doing. That is so crazy to me.
Right.
Because the new mnemonic to follow is meat, like a steak, an actual, a piece of meat. And it's movement, exercise, analgesics, therapy. That is the standard to follow with acute pain. So therapy is chiropractic, physical therapy, dry needling, massage, blah, 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 blah. Analgesics, analgesics is icing, muscle rub, over-the-counter anti-inflammatories. Then there's some others TENS and blah, blah, blah. Yep. What is the difference between movement and exercise? Exercise in general is just general movement strategy. You need to still keep moving when you have certain types of injuries. That's insane to tell someone to stop working out. Now, the M is movement, which goes back into directional preference. Right. And so there are specific diagnoses and injuries that it's kind of like a Trump thing where it's where it would the directional preference concepts would trump the general movement strategy. So let's say if bending forward to touch your toes is going to trigger your back pain. Okay, an extension is going to be your directional preference. So we need to do a bunch of extension. We need to avoid flexion as much as possible. Or if we do flex, we need to be very respectful in and out of it. That trumps the general movement. So if you go to the gym and go do a bunch of deadlifts, I would be like, Kevin, you need to probably avoid deadlifts right now. Let's stick with some of these full body movements that we can still work, do movement, still hit the legs, do this and that, but you're not going into tons of lumbar flexion. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, so
you got to stay active, but then work around.
So
that's stuff.
If the advice would have been, hey, halt doing, anything backloaded, do these sorts of things for the next, X amount of time.
And then we can 4 weeks.
Hey, no backloaded squats, but like kill that leg press machine.
Right. And then we can slowly implement start with this, X amount of times a month and slowly implement back into doing this. I would have been so much more receptive to being like, okay, here's how I get to being able to do those movements without pain is going temporarily without it, but going forever without it is like, I didn't like that answer. So
it's funny just to double down on that. And I remember telling you about this when I was having that pinched nerve in my shoulder. I was still very much training jiu-jitsu, and we talk about that and you're like, good. And I'm like, yeah, because the only time it feels great is right after jiu-jitsu. Like as soon as like I'd be doing jiu-jitsu and whatever, and then I'm like, I'm warm, I'm loose, I'm like, I've gotten there's a shitload of blood flow in there, like all those things. I'm like, oh, like these are the moments that I feel good. It's when I'm like not doing anything, that's when it starts to stiffen up, and that's when it starts to like really like I can't move my neck. And then I'm like, but it's like the joke in my head was like, I should just do jiu-jitsu all the time and my shoulder would be healed in a week. You know what I mean? Like it would be awesome. And I don't know if that's true or not, but the point being is it's like the time that it felt the best and the loosest and my neck and shoulder, I was like, I feel really good is at this moment, like with movement, with exercise, with doing the things like that are a part of this, that I'm like, I'm actively using this. Like I've been a huge believer for a long time, and I'm glad the literature is this way, but that it's like movement is healing in these situations.
It is funny that like the old school model of like, oh, your knees are hurting. Well, don't do anything that puts pressure on your knees. Let those bad boys atrophy.
Right. Huh?
Like, wait a sec. Okay, yeah, we really think about that.
Right.
Like, that doesn't exactly make like maybe like I think you put it in a good way. Be respectful with being in and out of those movements. Putting too much pressure can be a bad thing, but
especially when trying to heal through something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, one of the really interesting ones that because I just happened to be talking to somebody about this at the gym the other day. And it's a friend of mine, and she I was in the gym, and she kind of hollered at me, and her coach were kind of asking, she's dealing with, from I'm an idiot, let's preface here. But from what it sounded like in talking to her is like she was dealing with some like patellar tendonitis kind of situation. And she's not running, she's not jumping, she's not doing those kind of things that typically give the like runner's jumper's knee kind of like situation.
Right.
But she's doing a lot of like weightlifting that she hasn't done before. And she's like, sometimes it feels like my knees are gonna just explode. Right. And that's kind of, I feel like that's like a common thing. Like, and I'm like, does it hurt, when you're going up and down stairs? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like, from what I understand, that sounds like patellar tendonitis in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
And sitting here, like I'm the doctor.
But it does kind of sound like patellar tendonitis.
Right.
Black
or
market
patellofemoral syndrome of some sort.
Right. And so I was like, she was like, hey, like, what do you think I should do then? And I was like, well, I think like there's plenty of things to kind of like look into, and I'm far from being able to like really help. But I started doing some more like research on my own, and she was like, well, should I be still working out? And I'm like, yeah, probably.
Yes.
Like, yeah, you want to keep
tendonitis, yes.
Yeah, you want to move. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we started talking, and I started like, I was like kind of helping her, and I was like, how tight are your quads right now? And she's like, and we started like she started just like pushing on her quads, and she's like, oh, my knee just popped when I like pushed on my quad. And I'm like, well, from what it sounds like, at least for me, probably some tight quads, kind of pulling some stuff up. And I'm like, maybe let's just like, I would work with like a massage gun or a roller, like start to kind of do those. And I started looking into it a little bit more, and it's funny, but one of the things that I came across time after time a lot in like the literature of like an exercise to do for patellar tendonitis, which is like your patellar tendon is literally the homeboy right under the knee there, right on the bottom side, is leg extension static holds. Which like you would think like in a lot of ways, if you were like, oh my gosh, my knees hurt, like especially in that, a leg extension static hold, and it was like study and like literature after literature being like acute and long-term rehabilitation of like patellar tendonitis, one of the really good ways is like static hold weight.
How many times did you hear when you first started hitting the gym and doing leg extensions of, that you're gonna have bad knees because you do that? It's like I didn't really think much about it when I was early 20s of like, all right, I guess I'll have bad knees when I'm older kind of deal. But yeah, it's like, well, like if I I'm respectful about the movement, I think I can build a little strength.
It didn't say launch around way too much weight with terrible form. It was like, it literally was like,
static
hold, sustain, and all those kind of things. And then a lot of it too was like in conjunction with like quad rolling and like getting loose and like all these things that kind of relieve some of the potential tension and stuff that's happening there. But it's just so true to it. And I just remember even thinking like, it would be fucking like leg extension static hold as being like one of the recommended exercises for like short-term and long-term like rehabilitation of like patellar tendonitis. And I'm sure I'm probably butchering part of this, but like it is still just like super interesting. And so like I ended up sending that to her, and I was like, her and her coach, because her coach is a good friend of the store as well. And I was like, hey, some things maybe to work into her workouts if she's kind of working on this. But like one of the things that like reminded me of, and where I think we've talked about this before, I'm sure we have, but it's like the classic like knees over toes guy, and not saying that everything with him was perfect or anything, because I don't know everything. Yeah. But it's like one of the things that I guess to compound on that, or what I'm talking about, is one of my training modalities that have changed in the gym is getting stronger in those overextended positions. Nice. Because like if I'm weak there in a jiu-jitsu, you will end up there. Yeah. You better believe it. Yes. And so it's being strong and being, like mobile and strong in those positions in the right ways that allow me, I feel like, to release, stave off injury. But it kind of all falls into the same thing where the guy's like, the knees over toes guys stories like playing basketball and like could not jump anymore or whatever. And they were like, just stop doing anything with your knees. And he's like, well, why don't I just do everything with my knees in these compromised, like overextended positions? And
slowly ease into all of it.
And then you see those videos of him like knee touching into like a pool and like showing how strong he is in these like crazy positions. Yeah. And then he's like, I have zero knee pain. I'm done. And he like went to go play college basketball or something like that. And they told him to stop doing his own workouts. Wow. And you're like,
because it would hurt his knees. It's like, this is the only reason my knees work.
Yeah.
Right.
Crazy story.
Well, it's like, to kind of like paint it, I think, in a similar picture, and I hate to say it this way because I feel like I've dealt with it a little bit more recently, but I think that falls into like these old school methods or whatever, or getting too fixated on a specific aspect of something can send people down the wrong path sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like I had a couple of customers come in recently who were working with a licensed nutritionist, and I was not there for any of these meetings. I can only speak secondhand. Yeah. But they had this lady who was not the most petite lady. Well, not to be rude, but right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Had her on 1,100 calories, and I think she was told to eat 40 grams of protein a day. No other medical conditions that she was at least willing to share with me in the moment that would lead that to be an appropriate thing. But both the husband and wife in this situation should not have been anywhere near that low on calories, in my personal opinion.
That's malnourished.
Yeah, right. Dude. And again, I think we fall into, and not to get on a pedestal here, but like, yes, the law of thermodynamics says like calories in, calories out, right? Sure, like that is the law.
We can't ignore it.
We can't ignore that. But I think that sometimes you see it with the TikTok or whatever, where it's like, that's such an under explanation of the situation. Yeah. Well, yeah, but if I drop your calories down to 1,000 calories for the next 4 months, well, your basal metabolic rate and your muscle tissue is going to drop to crap. And now your calories in is way less, but your calories out is way less too, because just your actual ability for your body to function and burn calories went from maybe 1,800 to 1,000. Well, guess what? You could have just ate 800 calories and we could be in the same, like we could be working in the same spot here. Mm-hmm. Like you're taking this one dynamic or this one thought because it's supposed to be the overruling thing, and ignoring all the other things that go along with it. And I think comparing it to like the knees over toes guys is like, knees hurt, don't do things that make knees hurt. And you're like, yeah, but you're ignoring the fact that I'm improving that. I'm getting stronger there. Just like with this lady where it was like, yeah, that amount of calories, would she be losing weight? Sure. But she's also going to be losing muscle tissue. And we want to talk about long-term health.
Right.
And that looks like a much less aggressive calorie cut to maintain, build muscle tissue, get her more protein in her diet, which will naturally drop her calories in these other things. And it's like, if we do this, the long term, like, is it going to be as fast or as sexy or whatever? No, but she's going to look better. She's going to feel better. And like all of this in the end. And it's just like, it just blows my mind that it's like, you're still hearing this. Like, like how am I still hearing somebody who
trained licensed nutritionist that's giving that advice?
Right. And you're like, this is a bummer. Like how in the world, and again, I wasn't there. Maybe there's more. Maybe she told her, I want the most aggressive, whatever.
Right.
But from my knowledge and what was given to me from this person was, I was told to not eat over 1,100 calories a day, and my protein limit was like 45 grams. And I'm like, that is like, I didn't say this, but in my head, I was like, that's like, I couldn't tell you to do something worse. I literally don't know, like, if I could have, like, if I was trying to sabotage you, I would not have gone that far.
Right.
It's just crazy.
We get enough nutrition in chiropractic school to be dangerous.
Yeah.
And I mean, that just seems insane to me. And I mean, I know well enough, like, if you completely, like, really limit your calories, like, your body's literally going to hold on to weight because it's thinking it's starving itself, right? Basically, and that's kind of what you're describing. Like,
the analogy that I always use for that, and it's one that's I've been pretty successful with, is we have to stop looking at food as food sometimes, and we have to apply it to other things for people, just to, and just in anything, and just for the layman to just like understand something better with, speaking in a different way. But my analogy that I use for them, and my go-to analogy, and it seemed to resonate with them pretty well, is we have to stop thinking about like food and calories like that way, because it gets too black and white. You have to throw in some other dynamics to it. And the analogy
at very least, the fact that your body will adjust to the amount of calories you're taking in.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the analogy I always use is like, the amount of food that you're eating is your paycheck, your calories in is your paycheck, and your savings account is your body fat. And I always use the analogy, and I always say, okay, well, if you were getting paid, let's say you were getting paid $3,000 a month, and then tomorrow I let you know you're going to be getting paid, Jeff, for the next however long we decide to do this, instead of getting paid $3,000 a month, I'm going to pay you $1,100 a month. You're going to be more liberal or conservative with your savings?
Super conservative.
Super. You're not going to go blow it on a bunch of random stuff. And your body looks at it the same way. It goes, holy shit, I'm getting paid way less than I'm used to.
I got to hold on to this
tight.
Yeah.
And sure, at some point does, like, after you turn the electricity off and you turn the water off and all your muscle tissue's gone, sure, do you have to at some point eat into your savings? Yes. But your body is going to go through so many lines of defenses until it gets to that point, and none of those are things that are worth losing.
Yeah.
And so like it's sort of putting it that way. And I'm like, or, like, let's say you get paid once a month and it's $4,000, right? And I tell you, like, hey, instead of that, I'm going to pay you, $900 a week. Right. And to start explaining it, I'm like, well, now even though it's less money, right? You're, $900 a week versus what would be like $1,000 for $4,000 a month.
Yeah.
Is like, but now, I'm getting paid next Friday. It's not a big deal. I'm getting paid on Friday.
Yeah.
You become a little bit more comfortable. And I feel like your body does the same thing, of being willing to start to dip into that savings, because it knows another deposit is coming frequently. It's coming regularly. And it's like, once you start putting this in the mindset of like, your body doesn't freely want to just give up body fat like it is your savings account. Again, if I were to drop your paycheck from $3,000 to $1,100 a month, you're going to be conservative as a shit on your savings account. Your body's going to look the same way, look at it the same way. And I think that helped. I think that helped kind of give them a different perspective and a dynamic of like, oh, well, that's exactly how I would react too. It's like, yeah, right.
That's a brilliant analogy.
Thank you.
He's good with the analogies. That is, I haven't heard that one yet. That is a really good one.
That is good.
Yeah. Well, I think it just, again, like I was saying, like it just paints a different perspective because we get too black and white. It's like, oh, well, if I have less, then it will, and it's like, yeah, but there's hormones and things preferential things to burn. And it's like the bastard of the whole situation is that like your body doesn't view body fat as this like super expendable thing. It looks at it as like a thing it wants to hold on to.
Need this to survive.
To survive in case. And it's like, and then the people drop their, I'm getting on my whole pedestal here, but it's like people drop the frequency that they're eating because it's so low calorie. And then now you're feeding your body less frequently and less amount of food. And now it's even more holding on because it's like, I don't know when the next paycheck's coming. And I'm like, you're getting paid next month. And the month after, we'll talk.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, yeah, let's go buy a new car. Like, yeah, right. You know what I mean? Like, no, it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
Well, boys, we are over 2 hours.
Has it been over 2 hours?
Isn't it crazy how fast it goes?
Wild.
It goes so fast.
I was like thinking we maybe been doing an hour, and I was thinking like, hey, I'm gonna get to like a halfway point. I think I got to take a whiz. Let's do like halftime. And we're done.
We're at 2 hours and 13 minutes right now.
Flies,
nice. Yeah, that was fun,
dude. It goes by so fast.
Heck yeah.
Just to kind of wrap things up, I know I've praised you a lot, but you know, I think over 5 years of getting to know you, and not just as somebody I do jiu-jitsu with, not just as my chiropractor, but as like a genuinely somebody I value as a close friend. I just think the world of you. I think you're awesome. I think the way you run your business, I think the way that you help people, I just couldn't think more highly of you. I think you're the nicest guy around. And I love your heart. I love the way that you try to take care of people. You're always willing to help. You're always just so excited to just be around and having fun. And man, I want you to know like genuinely how much of an influence that has in my life. So much so that like you are a part of my recharge formula,
not
my recharge Tuesday,
but mentally.
Right. Because I love coming to see you. I love getting to talk to you. And so I'm really happy to have you on here because again, I am such a believer in what you do in chiropractic and your approach to it. And, you know, not to say that this is some massive, you know, thing to stand on to talk about it, but I really do think that there is a market in this that could genuinely help people as much as it's helped me. I am such a big believer in it. And so having somebody like you who does it right on the podcast, I really do think it's just an opportunity that's super cool to have you talk about it from your perspective, to just kind of let people know who maybe been on the fence or maybe been wronged by somebody in the industry before, which we can understand completely how many people come in and have been wronged by other supplement stores. But to know that there are good people out there that are doing the right thing, really trying to help people, and really helping people, not even just trying, but genuinely succeeding. And so I love you. Yeah,
love you too, man.
You're the best. And so I'm so happy that we got to have you on here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on the podcast, giving me a platform to try to, you know, put that out there for the public. Like there are good chiropractors. Of course, everyone knows there's good and bad in each profession, but there really is a scientific basis for what we're doing. We're measuring things. We're really trying to do things the ethical way. So thank you for letting me come on here and explain that a little bit.
Yeah, dude.
Be around you guys, get to see some insights into triads, seeing the warehouse. Like this has been a really cool experience.
If we have any listeners that are curious on getting to set up an appointment or curious on more about what you do, is there a good place for them to check out more info or reach out or set up an appointment? Or?
Yep. Our website is edmondchiropractorok.com. And you can search, my last name's pretty unique, Hijazi, Hijazi, and chiropractor. I'm sure you'll be able to find us that way.
Yeah. You guys have good social media too?
Yeah, we have
Back to Wellness.
Back to Wellness, OK on Instagram and on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
so
awesome. Well, Jeff, it was really nice to get to know you. Thomas hyped you up a lot. This was a lot of fun, man. A really fun episode. So appreciate you taking the time on a Monday night like this to hang out with us and talk a little bit more about chiropractic as well as business and a handful of other things with us, man. So appreciate you taking the time being on.
Thank you. Hopefully this will be the first of many in the future.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you for a healthy Thomas.
Yeah, right. For real. Thank you for a healthy Thomas. Yeah.
Keeping him not crabby and hurting.
You should have seen him before he started working with you. This like old crippled man walking around with a cane.
Get out of this store. I'm sleepy.
Just grouchy to everybody all the time.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
That's right.
Yeah. No,
Get off my lawn.
That's too funny. Do we know what episode this is?
46.
40 episode 46.
Yeah.
One of my new favorite numbers now.
Nice. Yeah.
The last purchase that on my lottery ticket.
There you go.
The last guest did have 45 tattooed on him.
Oh,
so
I don't know if I'll go that far. It will be my first ink. I'm inkless, so maybe 46 might be the first time.
What a crazy first tattoo that would be. that would be something.
46.
I've got some dumber tattoos.
Right. Yeah,
I'm successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, I've honestly, you said it, I feel like I have tattoos that are probably like just as silly.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's funny.
Nice.
Well, episode 46. Get it tattooed on your face. We love you guys. We appreciate everybody. So thanks.
Thanks for listening.